Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is neglected by the family devil fruit harem. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by NeonZangetsu and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. The whisperings of fate. He knew it from the very first bite. Ugh. Something was wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. Not only did this strangely shaped fruit taste strange, but the effects of it were even stranger. No sooner had he swallowed the first morsel of his meal than the sweet nectar of his mid-afternoon snack turned to ash in his mouth. For some reason, he decided to swallow. Despite the sudden surge of dread that swelled upward from his stomach, it was a costly mistake. No sooner had he taken that first, fateful bite than a strange prickling sensation trickled up his spine. Then came the burning. Hot. He yelped, for his body was suddenly incomparably so. Flames swept outward from his lips, scouring the ground black beneath him. He couldn't breathe. He felt a deep hollow enormity swelling upwards from his throat. Because in the next instant, his fingers morphed into flames. No, not just his fingers. The blaze was spreading, and already he was growing numb to the searing intensity of the inferno that swirled around him. What? His hand. His wrist. Hell. His arm. Is this? In his desperation, in his overwhelming desire to quench the flames that spread from his body and consumed him, the boy didn't hesitate. Although the water beneath him had begun to boil, his legs were only partially submerged in the shallows. He didn't even consider the repercussions of hurtling himself into the water's embrace. Jettisoning himself from the riverbank that had become his favorite fishing spot, he all but flung himself into the lake, frantic to cool himself down. Finding a strange fruit in the river and thoughtlessly wolfing it down. Now this. The quick swim, for all his dislike of water, an easy escape from the heat. This too proved to be a costly mistake. By the time he realized his error, it was too late. The current took him, dashing his suddenly rigid body against something hard. A pained gasp escaped him and too late, he lost the breath he'd been holding. His head crashed against another rock. Then another. And yet another still. What the hell? Blackness. You owe me, Gaki. Someone or something wrested him from the water. Whomever they were lowered him gently to the ground. The boy lay on his back, just breathing. It was still dark, but high overhead, he made out a branch. Stretching beyond the canopy, the harsh rays of afternoon sunlight gently slapped him across the face. After the black waters, it felt like stepping into a universe of light. Someone was standing over him, speaking to him. Because he recognized the words ass and idiot commingled with one another. Boy. A man's voice growled out. You alive, Whiskers? Nah, Naruto. He gasped out before a boot could nudge his whiskered cheek. My name's Naruto, not Whiskers. If he peered closely, he could just make out an orange hat. Because the man standing over him had the kind of face that suggested he didn't take bullshit from anyone. Wait a second. He was bare-chested, too. Why did that voice sound so familiar? Still struggling to blink away the swamp water from his eyes, the blonde struggled to regain his vision. Who the hell are you? But there was nothing. You ate a devil's fruit. The bleary voice announced suddenly. Didn't you, kid? The boot nudged him again. Less gently this time. The boy known as Naruto whined aloud and in protest, the 17-year-old adolescent pushing off against the muddied footwar in an attempt to regain his balance. He failed miserably. His strength promptly left him. Deserting as he flopped onto his stomach. I feel sick. An amused chortle echoed overhead. That's because you ate the Maramara no Mi. Was it? The boy mumbled into the dirt. He rolled over. Struggling into a sitting position, he instead found himself forced onto his back for a second time. As impossible as it seemed, he still couldn't quite make out the man's face. Whomever this fellow was, he was well muscled, save for his hat and black heavy shorts, he wore preciously little in the way of attire, making him all the more suspicious in the eyes of our waterlogged youth. Tell me kid, how are you feeling? Hot. Naruto conceded at last, scrubbing at his eyes with the back of a hand. I feel. No heat. His entire body was warm. Not even the blazing sun bothered him now. He had surpassed it. He sat up, wondering at it, even as the water turned to steam against his back and shoulders. His orange shorts, once wet and damp, were no longer so. In fact, they were perfectly dry. Save for a thin cloud of steam leaking from the remains of his once pristine blue tea, he was relatively intact. I feel good. He acquiesced at last, warily accepting a hand from the stranger when it was offered. I feel really good. He felt warm with energy. Something bright and full of fervor danced beneath his skin. It coursed through his veins and made his entire body tingle with elation. Pure power, the like of which he'd never felt before, misted from his body. A stray droplet rolled from his wet bangs to his nose, plinking to the ground as steam, while the rest of its brethren began to fall around them. It suddenly occurred to him that he knew this man. "Boy, Asen," Naruto began, "you never told me your. I hate to drop something like this on you, but I'm going to ask you for a favor." His as of yet unnamed rescuer declared suddenly. He reached down, tousling the boy's bangs mirthfully. "You see, my little brother's always sticking himself into all kinds of trouble." Despite the fact that he stood against and amongst the rain, he too exuded a strange otherworldly mist about himself, much like the blonde. "You're." He laughed. It was a deep throaty sound. "Keep an eye on Luffy, for me, nah." With that, he pushed up his hat with a finger and exposed his face. Lightning crackled through the sky overhead, exposing the shadowed visage that lurked beneath a peculiar orange hat. Manifesting amidst the steam whilst the raindrops plinked off his exposed and tattooed back, the man smiled, even as Naruto's gobsmacked expression widened in comical fashion for a moment. "Boy, Asen." He cried out in dismay, both against himself and the thunderer. But when the lightning next flashed. When next he turned to thank him, to condemn him, his savior was gone. All that remained was a charred piece of earth where the man had last stood. Leaving the blonde alone with the accursed power of his flames. Naruto paused, glancing at his own smoldering digits, now eerily aware of the power contained within them. The power of heat and flame. Naruto's mouth worked wordlessly. He curled his fingers into a fist, forced himself to exhale. He was trembling. Trembling. He'd been this close to death, only to be snatched away by the very man he'd so deeply admired as a child. Looking back, he still felt like one, having just been in the presence of the beyond. Of an event that defied the very laws of reality and time itself. That was. Only 6 words remained of the man's voice. "I'm counting on you, Uzumaki T. Naruto." Somewhere up in heaven, Portuga's Ace leaned back on a cloud. And smiled. Ignite. After 2 long years, his journey was reaching its end. At last, he was nearly there. Rumors carried him at last to Sabaody archipelago. With no nakama, no crew, and naught but the clothes on his back, he opened the doors and departed the spacious cabin for what would indeed be the final time. He stepped into the last remaining lifeboat, a rickety old thing. Practically falling apart at the seams. Irate, he warred with the urge to simply spread his wings of flame and wing himself to the mangroves. Unfortunately, that technique required a running start. One that, standing aboard a rickety raft, he no longer had. That being said, he couldn't help but eye the prospect of entering the relatively lawless port with more than a little churn. Just a bit further. If his boat sank here, now, before it hit the dock, then it would be all over for him. All the power in the world wouldn't be able to save him if he took a plunge into the water. Almost yes. His eyes lit with renewed life as his boot came within reach of the dock. A ways behind him, he detected the sound of enthused shouts and other relieved cries of mirth and relief. Mirroring those of the slaves he had freed. The ensuing chaos had attracted a large crowd of people, and for that, he was grateful. Even as he heard the odd cry or shout of thanks directed at his backside, he remained grateful for them. What happened? A woman cried. What were pirate ships doing this close to the Sabaody? Someone sank those ships. This from a wizened old coot who looked old enough to be Naruto's grandfather as, if he even knew him, discerned as everyone milled about. That meant it was time to leave. The Marines were bound to hear of this, the sinking of 3 ships, done in by a wanted criminal. That said criminal just so happened to have a great and terrible loathing of all things related to slavery, was unimportant. The last thing he needed was to draw attention to himself. Not here. Not now. There would be time to pat himself on the back later. For now, he had arrived at Sabaody. The worst was still yet to come, especially if he encountered a celestial dragon. With that thought in mind, Naruto drew his cowl up to his face, pulled his head down, tucked his chin in. Doing his level best to be discreet as he began to move amongst the people. Men, women, children of all ages, many were drawn to the sight of 3 ships blazing upon the open water. They knew not the culprit, only that there was a spectacle to be seen, and naturally, such a sight drew unwarranted attention. By the time the slaves had disembarked and been helped onto the dock, he was already gone. He thought that the clear-eyed one, Hinata, locked eyes with him for a moment as he slipped away. But, surely, that was impossible. Must have been my imagination. He mused, frowning as he watched her tug on the sleeve of another figure, the latter's face hidden within a cowl. Sugoi. What a woman. Wait, was that a fan on her back? He frowned, recognizing the figure as female, not by her face, but by her figure alone. Then Hinata pointed. Then the cowled woman turned, her jade green eyes peering through the cowl, seeking, trapping, finding his sapphire. Shit. She'd saw him. Perhaps it wasn't a coincidence after all, he realized as she began to make her way through the crowd at an undeniable pace, headed in his direction. Without a word, Uzumaki Naruto disappeared into the crowd. If the rumors were true that the Strawats were recruiting members. Then there was only one way to find out. The will of fire. A few miles outside Sabaody archipelago, Boa Hancock, the only female member of the Shichibukai, was helping Monkey D. Luffy ready his disguise. Far different than he was 2 years prior, save for his recognizable straw hat, Luffy wore a long-sleeved red cardigan with a yellow sash tied around his waist. During the last 2 years, he seems to have gotten only somewhat taller, and his hair is also faintly longer. On his chest was the X from scar he gotten from Admiral Akainu in the war over Marineford. That shadow on the horizon is the Sabaody archipelago, Hancock told Luffy. This is as far as we can take you. We can't afford to risk our association with you to the rest of the world. You should wear this to stay safe. You don't have to do that, Hancock, Luffy replied. Nobody is going to find out it's me. It's wise you keep it, Luffy dear, Hancock warned him. Well, the world believes you had died, your face is too recognizable even if 2 years has passed. I guess you're right then, Luffy responded as he put on his disguise. And don't worry about your things, Hancock also said as she brought in a very large and heavy book bag. I have assembled everything that is yours. Make it light, said Old Nyan. Thanks for all this you guys, Luffy replied in a gratitude manner. Also there is just one other thing I wish to ask you, Hancock, growing embarrassed. What is it? I'm still not going to marry you, said Luffy. No, Hancock half lied, still having the schoolgirl crush look. What I'm trying to say, don't say goodbye to me. It will be easier we don't say goodbye to each since we won't be seeing each other again. What are you talking about, Hancock, Luffy answer in a good manner. Now that we're friends, I hoping to see you again. However, as Luffy left, Hancock mistaken what he says as a marriage proposal, although Old Nylon told her it wasn't. Just as Luffy's boat disappeared from sight, someone called out. There is a ship coming from Sabaody. Hancock sent a Kuja pirate to grab a telescope for her while she went to have a look herself. Looking through the telescope, Hancock sees what appeared to be a majestic ship. A massive galleon. Hancock notices that the ship was heading towards them. Sister, I think that ship is heading tight towards us, said Bo Marigold. Is that so? Hancock replied in an emotionless tone. In that case, let's strip everything that ship owns. Wait a minute, Snake Princess, said one of the Kuja pirate named Aphalandra. She was recognizable with her great height over the rest of the Kuja pirates. She was using the telescope to take a closer look on the ship. I think O notices someone on the ship that looks familiar. As the majestic ship came a little bit closer, the whole Kuja pirates got good look on the people of the deck. That is when they notices 2 young women that wearing Kuja outfits. That looks like Ino and Hinata, said one of the female pirates named Marguerite. Ino and Hinata? Old Nylon repeated in surprise. Those 2 girls went missing several days while hunting. What are they doing here? Boa Sandersonia said in confusion. A moment later, after coming aboard the ship, Ino and Hinata was kneeling before Hancock. It was reported that you 2 had been gone missing for 5 days after you went to the mountains hunting. Hancock spoken down on them with stern tone, eyes motionless. Where have you 2 been and what were you doing at Sabaody? Both Ino and Hinata were quiet for a moment, as if they were too embarrassed to say anything. From the look on their faces, they feel a heavy pressure under Hancock's gaze. Finally Ino responded in a hesitating tone, we were kidnapped by some slavers, Snake Princess. That's impossible. Hancock replied in a disbelief tone. There was no way any slavers could have kidnapped you from Amazon Lily. We thought it was impossible as well, Snake Princess, said Hinata. However, we learned that the slavers use some sort of material to easily sail across the waters of Amazon Lily, immune to the Sea King's senses. What kind of material they're using? Old Nyan asked, sensing something on what Hinata was saying. I believe it is sea stone material, Graman Ilon, Hinata replied. Everyone was already aware of sea stone material. It is a substance that naturally originated from the seas. It is also the main thing that can cancel out devil fruit powers. Because the calm belt is infested by countless numbers of sea monsters called sea kings, Amazon Lily is naturally protected against outsiders. However, thanks to a brilliant scientist named Dr. Vegapunk, the Marines begin using sea stone on the bottoms of their warships, which they escape unnoticed by the sea kings. With their protection now eroded, the only way to keeping outsiders from entering Amazon Lily is for the ruler of the tribe, such as Boa Hancock, to uphold her standing as a Shichibukai and sign a treaty with the world government for their continued security. But now slavers are using sea stone substance to easily infiltrate Amazon Lily. If what Hinata and Ino said is true. How did you 2 manage to escape the slaves? Said another Kuja pirate named Sweet Pea. The slavers were attacked by someone, Hinata began to explain. He single-handedly defeated all of them before he disappeared into Sabaody. However, Hinata was very hesitant as she seems afraid to finish what she said. However, what Hinata? Hancock insisted. Did you see your savior's face? I did, said Hinata. I recognized him from the wanted posters. He was regarded by the Marines and the world government as an extremely dangerous pirate. Do you know the name of this pirate that saved you, Hinata? Hancock asked. She believes it was Burning Will Uzumaki to Naruto, Ino finished. The very mention of the name sends a shock wave to all the female pirates, including Boa Hancock, Old Nyan, Boa Sandersonia and Boa Marigold, whose faces was covering absolute doubt and surprise. Hancock have heard that name before and thought that she wasn't hearing right on what Ino just said. Burning Will Uzumaki to Naruto. Repeated Marguerite, whose tone was in disbelief and surprise. You must be mistaken. Said another female pirate by the name of Ran. No, we are not, Hinata insisted in her replied. We saw him last night ago when he saved and freed us from the slavers at Sabaody. How do you two know he's the Burning Will? Hancock demanded. Even though she really didn't believe what Hinata and Ino has said, something inside tells her that they were telling the truth. I saw his face perfectly, Snake Princess, Hinata gives out the details. Spiky blonde hair, fox-like whiskers, sapphire blue eyes, it matches the descriptions on the bounty from the Marines. The crew of that majestic ship that drops us, Ino also added. They turn out to be former slaves that Burning Will freed. How do you know that? Old Nyan asked in an interest tendency. We saw the slave marks on their bodies, Graham and Ilon, Hinata explained. It looks like the mark of a world noble, a bull hoof tattoo. Although no one seems to notice it, both Bo's sisters' faces were growing serious as they understand the truth, since she felt the slave mark burning on her back emotionally. They claimed that Naruto freed them from the world nobles and are heading back to a hidden camp of escaped slaves, Ino carry on with her story. But there is something you also need to know, Snake Princess. I fear the man Straw Hat Luffy may be in danger, for Naruto is looking for him. What was that? Hancock cried out loud, while quickly standing up. What do you mean Luffy is in danger? Why would Burning Will be looking for him? Based upon what information we got from the crew, Ino comprehensive. They have seen him carry Luffy's wanted poster with him all along. We don't know why Burning Will was looking for him, but the ex-slaves told us that he'd been traveling across the Grand Line looking for him. Right now we need to return to Amazon Lily and warn Luffy about him. You're too late, Ran responded. Right now Luffy is already in Sabaody as we speak. There is possibility he might run into Burning Will Naruto. If he's there, then we must find him and warn him about Burning Will, said Hinata. We don't know what his motives are towards Luffy. Suddenly Hancock bolted from her seat and began walking towards one of the smaller boats of her ship. However, Old Nylon stopped her. I know what you're thinking, Hancock, and what you're about to do. Old Nylon sternly said to her. You're planning to go after Luffy and warn him of Burning Will is looking for him. If you do that, you'll not only expose Luffy to the world, but you'll expose Amazon Lily's connection with him. But Graham and Ilon, Hinata answered desperately. Despite Luffy being a man, he's our friend. He owns him that. She right, Marguerite also agreed. We can't just stand here and do nothing. It's out of our hands, Hinata and Marguerite, Old Nine responded. There is nothing we could do. All we need to do is trust in him in case the Burning will catch up to him, although she hates to admit it. Hancock knows Old Nyan is right. The last thing she needs is to attach connection between Amazon Lily and Luffy. If the world government finds out about it, they wouldn't hesitate to revoke Hancock's membership as a Shichibukai and move into position to destroy Amazon Lily, a pirate nation. Still, it tormented her deeply with the knowledge that the man she loves is beginning hunted by one of the most dangerous rookie pirates to exist in the world. Hancock has to have faith that man she loves is able to protect himself, since he had been trained by Sliver Rayleigh, the former first mate of the legendary Pirate King, on how to master his hockey powers. Yet she slowly begins to have doubts since Burning Will was looking for Luffy. After the attack on the capital Mariedja, a large task force of marine warships and soldiers was dispatched to go after Burning Will Uzumaki to Naruto and bring him to justice. Leading the task force was Admiral Kizaru, one of the ultimate powers regarded by the world government. However, when the marine task force caught up to Naruto, he easily wiped them out. According to Admiral Kizaru's reports, Naruto was a hockey master, having displayed the 3 forms of hockey in battle. Kizaru also reported that he inherited the power of the Maramara no Mi, the Loja devil fruit that once belonged to Luffy's deceased brother. Naruto proved to be too much of a formidable opponent to handle, and Kizaru was forced to retreat, being the only survivor. As a result of Naruto's fighting abilities and crimes, the world government places a $350 million beely on his head, as Naruto had managed to hold his own against a marine admiral. The bounty on Naruto's head was second to Luffy's bounty. $400 million beely. Yet through her access as a Shichibukai, Hancock learned the reason of the vast bounty was because Naruto killed 3 world nobles. Before Luffy, Hancock felt it was impossible for anyone alive to oppose a world noble. After she had heard Luffy struck a world noble, she quickly befriends him, consider him trustworthy outside her family. Due to her feelings, Hancock has a tough time looking at Luffy in the eye due heavy crush she has on him. Then last year, Hancock heard about the attack on Mariedja. According to the newspapers, a pirate that goes by the name Burning Will begins the purge of the capital of the world government all by himself. During the ravaging of Mariedua, he freed countless numbers of slaves who escaped to freedom. To Hancock, Naruto was the second man to attack Mariedua. The first was a fisherman adventurer named Fisher Tiger, who invaded Mariedua and freed thousands of slaves. Hancock and her sisters have barely met or seen him only once, as they too were slaves to the world nobles. They owe him a debt which cannot be repaid. However, to Naruto, unlike Fisher Tiger, and despite being the third man to defy the world nobles, he was the first man to commit a crime that was unspeakable. Hancock learned that Naruto had murdered 3 world nobles. The killing of the descendants of the 20 kings was unheard of, unbelievable in this world. It completely shocked Hancock, measure up to the Marines and the world governments as well. Although the killing of the 3 world nobles was kept from the public, the Marines and the world government were heavily pressured by the world nobles, angrily demanding that Uzumaki Naruto brought to reprimand for what he did. Under the pressure of the world nobles, the Marines and world government had been using all their resources in looking for Naruto. They'd mobilized their entire forces to look for him, not just in the Grand Line, but also the 4 other seas such as the East, West, North, and South Blue. However, Naruto had disappeared from public sight following his attack of Mariedua. Nobody seems to know where he is for the last 6 months. Hancock has long thought about the one known as Burning Will Uzumaki Naruto. In her mind she believes men are degraded, disgusting and vile, that deserve to die, though Luffy had proven to be the opposite of her viewpoint on men. She never met Burning Will in person and is unable to tell his true character. However, she has heard how he attacked Mariedua, free thousands of slaves, and murdered 3 world nobles. Fisher Tiger did the same thing, and Hancock begins to think Naruto was like him, although Fisher Tiger didn't murder a world noble, especially 3 of them. Burning Will Uzumaki Naruto. Hancock thoughts repeated. What kind of person are you? What are you up to? And why are you looking for Luffy? She doesn't know why this Naruto is looking for Luffy. But if harmed the man she loved, Hancock vows to avenge Luffy's death, even if it cost her life. Meanwhile. Indeed, Sabaody Archipelago was the absolute best. There was food, booze, women, and plenty of entertainment to be had if you had the coin. And if you didn't, then you were shit out of luck. Naruto mulled it over as he risked a precursory glance to the pouch tied to his belt. 100 million berry. Someone was bound to try and snatch at it sooner rather than later. The same could not be said of his raft, however. The light dingy having already capsized during his skirmish with the slavers, practically sinking even as its former master stepped off the mast and onto the dock. Risking a precursory glance back at this vessel, he tipped his head in farewell. Because the mast had already quietly dipped below the waters of the pier. Now it was merely a matter of staying out of sight until he could find what he'd come here for. Of course, there was also the matter of ditching the bothersome wench who'd taken it upon herself to tail him halfway across Sabaody Archipelago. He was nearing Grove number 47 as planned, but so too was his pursuer. Now, he'd dodged into one of the many ramshackle establishments set up by the street vendors, chosen a seat, and contented himself to see what it was that fate had in store for him. That had been nearly an hour ago. Something on your mind, stranger? Naruto had been ignoring the ruckus outside. It hadn't been any of his concern. Now he creaked an eye open as someone approached the empty seat at his right. He frowned, shifted in his chair, his left eye reappearing over his shoulder, and immediately regretted it. He found himself staring at. Naruto half turned, only to find his view suddenly blocked by a very large pair of breasts. Attached to said breasts was a chest, and to that a neck. The latter eventually leading up to a darling pair of jade green orbs that utterly captured his attention and captivated him. Shit. The owner of these eyes met his gaze and smiled brazenly, brushing aside a stray strand of sandy blonde hair from that bewitching gaze. She was the girl from the pier. The one who'd been following him. Which of course, didn't sit well with Naruto at all. A lot of things. He said, his face betraying nothing, his mind already racing. And you? More than I'd like to think about. She finished, fixated upon him. May I join you? Naruto yawned. Ah, excuse me. He said, pretending to look at the many baubles of the shop. Sure. I'm Damari. She introduced herself abruptly, sweeping into the seat beside him. And you are? Naruto. He countered, unwilling to give any other reply than a lie. I'm a traveling merchant. Fascinating, Tamari smiled warmly, reaching into her right sleeve as she did so. So tell me, Naruto-kun, do traders such as yourself regularly commit themselves to random acts of piracy? She emerged with a charred piece of timber and summarily slipped it onto the bar beneath them, her gaze never leaving his, not even for an instant. I don't think that's any of your business. Naruto countered, smiling thinly. Speaking of which, I take it you have a reason for cornering me here, on your home turf. He did not think she'd be foolish to attack him openly, and so he yawned again. He hadn't freed those slaves because he'd wanted to. It merely been a matter of professional disgust and distaste. There was nothing personal about the way in which he'd slaughtered the slaves. Hell, he even considered saying I've killed people like you just to see what a reaction would be. Oh, if only it were that easy. She shook her head. You said so yourself. You're no enemy of mine. At least, not at the moment. She was pressing him. Not only with her words but her gaze. Making it increasingly difficult to look away despite the ever-growing ache in the pit of his stomach. And it wasn't hunger. Her scent, her perfume, her attire, nearly everything about Temari bespoke of it. Not just of anxiety or gratitude though these two could be seen in the features of her face but also of vulnerability. Either she was a damned good liar or she was deliberately trying to hash it out with him. Regardless of either. Odds she was cute. Maybe even too cute. Because for every second he spent chatting up this bodacious beauty, Luffy was getting further and further away. Well, isn't that wonderful? Naruto snapped back. Not really. She turned aside, sparing a longing glance out the porthole, the smallest of smiles adjourning her features at the sights she found there. If it's not too much, I have a favor to ask of you. She exhaled softly and a strong breeze gusted between them. I understand that you might have some business on Fishman Island sometime in the near future, and… Then she turned chalk white. Her smile shattering like so many shards of glass, her mouth working wordlessly, Naruto eventually found his curiosity aroused. Reluctantly, he allowed his gaze to drift across the table and alight upon the spectacle that had captured her attention so and left her riveted. It must have been something to stop a woman like her in her tracks. Ah shit. And it was something indeed. He felt his spirit sink like a stone as he saw them. Marching a steady rank and file line across the streets. Marines. So they were onto him after all. Blast. So much for secrecy and stealth. If the Marines knew him to be here, then an Admiral was likely to be already on the way. Troublesome, as his old friend had once said. So very, very troublesome that for a terrifying second, Naruto considered just wiping out the whole of Sabaody in one giant fireball. The realization that he'd likely be destroying himself as much as the Marines put a slight damper on that plan. As did any other notion of finding Miss Temari to be incredibly attractive. Now, unless he wanted to tangle with an Admiral again and risk destroying the archipelago itself, all plans for leisure would have to be discarded. That meant cutting ties with said buxom blonde and cutting them fast. Naruto painted a smile onto his face. And here I thought I'd kept myself inconspicuous. Temari smiled thinly, her face only just regaining its usual pallor. I could say the same for Monkey D. Luffy. I beg your pardon. Naruto blinked, his composure forgotten. Here. His fellow blonde offered the unamused Loja poster. Think of it as a gift. Oh. Naruto read over it rapidly. I see. He's gathering followers here in Sabaody. Naruto frowned, the words having scarcely left his lips before a fireball ignited within his hand. He smiled at it, twirling it over in his hand as he would a coin. You've done me a wonderful service, Temari-san. However, whatever your favor on Fishman Island might be, I'm afraid I'm not in the business of simply stealing or kidnapping or whatever it is that you might possibly ask of me. But. No buts. He leaned forward, breaching the distance between them with a deceptive amount of agility. Temari stiffened. One moment he'd been within arm's reach. The next, he loomed over her, his lips brushing her outer lobe as he spoke whispered softly in her ear. There was something seductive, almost primal in his gaze when he spoke. If I find out that you had any part in the Marine presence here, he purred, tracing a finger over Temari's jawline. I'm going to find you, rip out your spine, flog you with it, then scour the flesh from your bones until you beg me to kill you. He paused, let it sink in, let the words soak into her features. And if, by some chance, you had nothing to do with their arrival, then I will be perfectly blunt with you, if I see you again, following me, shadowing me, in any way, shape or form, I will send you back to your master or masters, or whomever it is that sent you to possibly recover any possibly lost property of any possible person that is possibly an owner of a possible ex-slave, in a body bag. He smiled, apparently amused by the elaborate terms he had used. Understand? She managed a nod. But. Wonderful. Naruto clapped his hands together, for the Marines had passed. His point was made brutally clear in the resulting blow that chopped across her neck and speckled black spots before her vision. Banishing her to the depths of unconsciousness. She didn't even have the time to cry out, and she knew only thus. Discussion closed. Sir? The shop vendor looked at Naruto questioningly as the blonde reached into one of the many racks and proctored a thick matte black cloak. Then he saw the slumped girdle slung over the shoulder of his would-be customer. He flipped 2 silvers in the man's direction. That's one for the coat. He said. Another to take care of her until she wakes up. Thank you for your business, sir. The vendor replied in a hushed tone, humbling scooping up the money that had been gifted to him. Clearly he recognized the face of the man before him. Because that man's wanted poster was strewn all over Sabaody archipelago. That said man had just bequeathed a substantial amount of coin unto him, spoke not only of his generosity, but of his infamy. Naruto laid Temari down, donned the cloak, and laid another few hundred berry at the man's feet. This, he began slowly, is for your silence. He pushed the stack of bills forward. You didn't see anything now, did you? The man's eyes bulged, his mouth working wordlessly. And nothing at all. He managed at last. Naruto smiled. Pleasure doing business with you. With a small smile, he spun on a heel, flipped up his cowl and headed toward his destination. At the Sabaody Marine Base, platoons of Marine soldiers had begun mobilizing for action, readying themselves for Grove 46 number. A scout had reported that the infamous pirate known as Straw Hat Luffy is begin seen at pirate recruit gathering. To the Marine forces of Sabaody archipelago, this may be a chance to redeem themselves. The Marines learned that the legendary pirate Sliver Rayleigh was being sold as a slave at the human auctioning house. Seeking a chance to capture the right-hand man of the previous pirate king, the Sabaody Marine forces surrounded it with their troops. Then come the unthinkable thing that occurs: the Straw Hat pirates attack the world nobles. The Marine base was ordered by headquarters to prevent them in escaping, however they failed misery as Luffy, along with the captains of the Heart Pirates and Kid Pirates, easily defeated them. It was a shame that emotionally burned all the Sabaody Marines. With Straw Hat Luffy now making an appearance after 2 years, they felt they are blessing with one last chance to take down the infamous rubber pirate. However, one other person that arrived in Sabaody Marine Base felt they're underestimating the Straw Hat pirates, and his name is Sentomaru. Sentomaru was a very large man, looking like a sumo wrestler. His outfit consists of a shirt that looked like a giant brown apron, with a symbol meaning heaven on the front, and a large red and white robe. He was carrying a very large battle axe and has Marine officer coat over his shoulders. You're going to mobilize the pacifistas? A Marine officer asked with surprised look. Of course I am, Sentomaru replied. It seems you guys are underestimating the Straw Hat pirates. You think they'll be the same as they were 2 years ago. They must have gotten much stronger, which is the reason why they came out of hiding. I can't understand what the hell was wrong with Kuma, Sentomaru kept on. But he seems to lost his personality to his behavior. I knew someday that the Straw Hat pirates are going show up here in Sabaody archipelago. This time they won't escape us. Just then another Marine officer, ranked as a lieutenant, enters the room. His face was covered in panic. Captain Sentomaru, the Marine lieutenant said in a panicking manner. I have terrible news. Whatever terrible news you got, it has to wait, Sentomaru responded to the Marine lieutenant. But you don't understand, the Marine lieutenant pleaded. I just came from the interrogation room with shocking news of dangerously and powerful known pirate here in Sabaody archipelago. I already know Straw Hat Luffy is here Sabaody. I'm not talking about Straw Hat Luffy, sir, said the Marine lieutenant. I'm talking about Burning Will Uzumaki T. Naruto. What did you just say? Sentomaru asked with shocking look on his face. I trying to tell you that Burning Will Uzumaki T. Naruto is here on this island. The Marine lieutenant said again. Burning Will Uzumaki T. Naruto. The Marine officer repeated in disbelief. No way, you must be mistaken, lieutenant. Do you remember that incident last night at shipyard coding? The Marine lieutenant begins to verbalize. There was a survivor from the burning 3 pirate ships. A pirate captain claimed that he saw Burning Will Uzumaki T. Naruto with his own eyes. There's no way. The Marine officer refused to believe it. He hadn't been seen in many mouths since he defeated Uncle Kizaru. Sentomaru finished what he about to say. Yeah, I know that. Sentomaru had heard how the rookie pirate driven his uncle into retreating after he wiped out 50 Marine warships and several tens thousands of soldiers single-handedly. Based on his uncle's reports, Naruto was far too strong for Kizaru to defeat, and recognizing him as a hockey master. Naruto was the strongest supernova pirate able to hold his own against a Marine Admiral, far stronger than the Supernova 11 that occurred here in Sabaody archipelago 2 years ago. It was the reason why the world government decided to raise his bounty to $350 million. Do you think he's here to join the Straw Hat pirates? The Marine officer asked. It's possibility, Sentomaru assumed. But if he is, then taking down Straw Hat pirates is going to be harder than thought. Later at a certain bar of Grove number 47, a woman was taking a drink. In her appearance, she was 20 years tall young woman, very lovely with her long orange hair, along with attractive body. Her outfit was a revealing green and white bikini halter top, low-rider jeans that expose some of her hips, orange high-heeled sandals, and a pair of pearl-like earrings. She bore a blue tattoo on her left shoulder which represents Mikan and pinwheels. This was no ordinary woman, having a conversation with the bar owner. Say, have you heard news about the Marines? Said the bar owner. They've set up a new headquarters. Isn't the Marine headquarters in Marineford, the one near Sabaody? The orange-haired woman asked the bartender. It was, but it switched places with a place called G1 Base, the bar owner explained. G1 Base was once a branch station right on the opposite side of the Red Line. Sengoku's replacement, the new Marine Fleet Admiral, is showing the world he means business. We're talking about the Marine headquarters within the territory of the Yoko. As a result, Sabaody archipelago has become more uncontrollable with pirates being able to act more freely than before, the bartender continued. I see what you mean, orange-haired woman replied. I was wondering why the town has so much wild activity than it was 2 years ago. Just then someone took a seat next to her. This newcomer was wearing a long black cloak. It was like a shroud and it hid most of his face, save for half of his mouth and what looked like a whiskered cheek. Roughened blonde bangs could just barely be seen if one focused their gaze into the shadows of his cowl. Most, however, were simply too intimidated to give the stranger more than a passing glance. Pardon the interruption, but, he spoke. His voice tumbling to a low pitch even before the words had left his mouth. I heard that you sell good ramen here, said the cloaked stranger. I'll take 10 bowls, if you don't mind. 10? For a moment, orange-haired woman nearly choked on her drink. She rounded on the voice, almost expecting to find him there. Only one person could possibly order, let alone eat, such a vast amount of food. But no, she realized, it was not him, not the man she had been waiting for. If anything, she couldn't possibly have been closer to the truth, and yet, she hadn't a clue as to whom had just joined her at the counter. 10? The bartender gawked. Kid, are you sure you can eat that much? I'm more than willing to pay. The voice reassured the baffled owner of the bar. Please, heat them up right away. Having a new customer, the bar owner turned round to arrange the cloaked stranger's order. The orange-haired woman studied the stranger carefully. This man's body, as well as his face, was carefully hidden. That was nothing new. Many a man wanted to keep his identity a secret from those around him. Given the lack of marine presence in Sabaody, it really wasn't much a surprise that he wanted to keep his identity a secret from the general public. Then she noticed a necklace around his neck. It looked like a perfectly shaped green stone object around the stranger's neck. Examining the necklace careful, Nami estimated its worth to be lots of berry. That is, if she could manage to steal it. That was also a sizable pouch of coin that he had strapped to his waist. Can I help you with something, miss? Damn it. She balked. It seemed that her attention hadn't gone unnoticed after all. She'd been noticed as well. Upon raising her gaze to meet his, she was greeted by a small smile, twin oars of pure sapphire, and the strangest inclination that she'd seen this man somewhere before. Or, at the very least, heard of him. When he said nothing further to divulge his identity, she opted to let the matter drop. Sorry about that, orange-haired woman replied. I thought you were someone else. Someone I'm waiting for. I see. The cloaked stranger inclined his head in a gesture of minute deference. You see, I am also waiting for someone. I wonder, might I trouble you for a moment of your time, if you have some to spare? The ramen was set down on the counter before him then, and his attention swiveled toward his meal. He broke out a pair of chopsticks and, almost immediately, began to quietly partake of his meal. Just who is this guy? You seem like the type of person who knows Sabaody archipelago like the back of your hand, the cloaked stranger began, doing his best to keep his attention fixated on his ramen and nothing else. I was wondering if you might help me with something. 10 bowls clattered to the countertop, and now, the orange-haired woman truly gawped. In less than 10 seconds, he had simply devoured 10 bowls worth of ramen. Something? The orange-haired woman inquired. Someone. The cloaked stranger corrected. There's coin in it for you, if you're willing. After a pause, he decided to add that money was of little to no value for him and she would be well rewarded for her services. The orange-haired woman considered his offer for a moment. Obviously, this stranger was searching for something and more than willing to pay for it. The orange-haired woman smiled as she thought what price she wanted. She could, of course, demand all the berry he had in her pouch. Inevitably, her gaze gravitated toward the necklace draped around his neck. An item like that, she mused, would be far more valuable than any amount of berry. She wanted that necklace. Yes, I know much of Sabaody archipelago like the back of my hand, the orange-haired woman replied at length. But in exchange for some information there is a price. What sort of price? The cloaked stranger asked, half of his face is still hidden. From what she could see, his smile had all but evaporated. And yet he made no move to clutch at the pouch at his waist or count his gold whatsoever. Did he really place so little value in his coin? The orange-haired woman believed his relief would be palpable, therefore, when she met his gaze and named her price. That necklace around your neck, the orange-haired woman responded. That is my price. Do you want my necklace? Asked the cloaked stranger. This old thing. His words were edged with confusion and, was that amusement she detected in his tone? No, it couldn't possibly be. He was wearing a veritable goldmine around his neck and there wasn't so much as a glimmer of deception in his eye. Truly, he seemed genuinely pleased by the confusion flitting across her features. "Yeah," said the orange-haired woman, composing herself. "I'm willing to give you any information you're looking for in exchange for it." The cloaked stranger rips the necklace from around his neck as if he was ready to give it to orange-haired woman. Just as he was about to hand it over to her he suddenly held it back. "I'm sorry," the cloaked stranger said. "I don't think I could do that." "Why not?" asked the orange-haired woman. "It's a fair price." "No," the cloaked stranger said. "It wouldn't be a fair price if I handed somebody their death." "What?" The orange-haired woman answers back in a surprised tone. "Wait a minute, what do you mean by that? Handed my death?" "Well," the cloaked stranger began to explain. "This necklace once belonged to my godmother. She once gave it to her little brother and boyfriend because it is a sign of good luck to help them in their journey. However, the cloaked stranger continued. Her little brother, then later, her boyfriend, each died of gruesome deaths. The necklace that she had given each of them the day before that death inevitably returned to her and she began to view it as some kind of curse." He paused, peering at a point past the orange-haired woman, almost as if he'd seen something there, but he said nothing. "How come you're wearing it?" Her curiosity piqued, the orange-haired woman couldn't help but broach the subject further. "Or should I expect you to die a horrible death as soon as you leave this bar?" Her concern wasn't entirely fade. If the necklace was indeed cursed, then she wanted to sell it as quickly as possible before it could be passed on to her. "Well," the cloaked stranger began to say. "I made a bet with her. I bet her that I would be able to unlock my Hashoku Haki. She didn't believe I would have it since only 1 in a million people can possess the power." The orange-haired woman had heard the word haki before. As she tried recalling her memories on what it was, someone interrupted her thoughts. "Did I just hear right?" Someone's loud voice was heard. $55 million Beely. Bang. The gunshot was heard that causes everyone in the room to turn their heads. At a table with food and drinks, a large and fat middle-aged man has shot a pirate in front of him. He was wearing a straw hat, a shirt that is open and too tight to close due to his overweight figure, and he wearing what appeared to be boots. His legs are thin and hairy. He has an X-shaped scar on his stomach and another scar on his left shoulder. "Try reading the poster correctly next time," the fat man with straw hat sneered. "The least bounty is $70 million Beely. I'm not interested in taking captains with bounties lower than that. But hell, I'm amazed you ever made it this far." "Who is that guy?" the cloaked stranger asked. "That guy there is Straw Hat Luffy stranger," said the bar owner behind the cloaked stranger and Nami. "Straw Hat Luffy?" the cloaked stranger responded in an almost surprising tone. "You're telling me that guy is Straw Hat Luffy?" "Of course he is," said the bartender. "He's the son of the infamous Monkey D. Dragon and the grandson of the legendary Monkey D. Garp the Fist. His bounty was increased to $400 million Beely after his actions between the inescapable Impel Down and the war over Marineford. Right now he and his crew are coming out of hiding," the bar owner continues. "They're recruiting a strong crew for the new world." "That lost trash." Straw Hat Luffy cruelty shouts down on the wounded man. "I'm the son of the legendary revolutionary dragon, you know. We don't have any time for weaklings who are going to slow us down," said a sniper king. "You've just not at our level. You think we're dumb enough to allow a fool into our crew?" Turning to another crewmate, Luffy said, "Hey Frankie, how many do we got?" "The total is about 100, Frankie replied. 3 full pirate crews have joined us. 10 of them had bounties on their heads. And 2 of them are supernovas everyone talking about," Luffy sneered. "They are the brother captains Wet Hair Caribou and Blood Splatter Koribu. Their bounties are worth $210 million and $190 million Beely on their heads. Those are the kind of guys we needed in our crew. Wouldn't it be so much fun if we had Burning Will Uzumaki D. Naruto on our crew, Captain?" said Nami. "He has the largest bounty of the supernovas. $350 million Beely, the biggest bounty we've come across so far." "Yeah," agreed Sajaking. "But nobody's seen him these many months since the incident at Mariejo last year. However, even if he did want to join our crew, it will be a big risk since he's been hunted mercifully by the Marines and the world government." "Perhaps you're right," sighed Luffy. "Ah, screw it. We got enough bounties to expand our reputation in the new world. Ain't that right?" Peering to the bar owner where the cloaked stranger and the orange-haired woman are, Luffy shouted, "Oi. Bartender. Bring me some rum." He grinned lecherously seconds later as his gaze fell upon the orange-haired woman whom the man had been servicing a moment before. "And you lovely lady, it's obvious you've been standing there for a long time. Why don't you come and have a drink with me, eh?" "No thank you," answered the orange-haired woman curtly. "I'm waiting for someone." Everyone in the room felt their jaws drop and their eyeballs bulge from their sockets. A refusal, a blatant refusal, orange-haired woman had turned down Monkey D. Luffy. To refuse an extremely dangerous pirate with a bounty of $400 million was unwise. So unwise in fact that the bartender felt inclined to remind the woman of her mistake. "Listen lady," the bar owner whispered to her on frightening tone. "You'd be better off doing what that guy said. That mad pirate went charging into the middle of the war 2 years ago. I'm sure you heard about it, right?" She refused to honor him with a response. "Waiting for someone, are you?" said Sniper King as he approached the orange-haired woman. "I'm sure he just a puny weakling who'll be crying on his knees the second he hear Captain Luffy's name. Now get over here right now." He leaned forward threateningly, clearly believing that the orange-haired woman was about to come to her senses and grovel for mercy at their feet. Instead, the cloaked stranger deftly placed himself between Sabaody and the orange-haired woman. Now, rather than dragging the vixen over to the captain as Sabaody had intended, he found the hand of that man clamped upon one massive forearm, halting him in his tracks. And to make matters worse, Sabaody couldn't seem to move. Literally his arm, no, his entire body, was suddenly frozen in its tracks as he locked gazes with the man who had dared to assault him. "Listen friend," said the cloaked stranger. "Why don't we just let bygones be bygones and leave the nice lady alone?" With a deft flick of his wrist he released the Sniper King, a simple backhanding that not only expressed his contempt but utterly embarrassed the famed king of snipers. It was, quite literally, a slap on the wrist. Though this particular slap was heated to nearly 90 degrees Celsius and therefore quite warm in its intensity. For a man of Sabaody's caliber, the blow should have been nothing. Sabaody screamed. "Ah!" he yowled. It was a plaintive pitiful whine. "Hot. It's who hot." "Shut up, Sabaody," Frankie hissed, seeking to calm the belligerent man. "It's not funny anymore." "It should be." The man lowered a smoking hand, revealing that it was he who had left the red palm print in the flesh of Sabaody's forearm. "I didn't think that little love tap would hurt you so much, Sabaody." He all but spat the last syllable, as if the term itself was poison to him. Abruptly, the humor trickled from his features like so much steam, although there was no such thing to be found in this silent challenge. Suddenly, the silence was deafening. "You better mind your own business, fellow." Luffy warned the cloaked stranger, his contempt evident. "I despise fools, above all fools who don't mind their own business." The threat alone was enough to make the bar patrons quiver in their boots. The orange-haired woman simply arched an eyebrow, took a sip of her drink and wondered at the true identity of this man who had so pointlessly come to her aid. "Fools, you say?" The cloaked stranger scowled, a blood-red iris reappearing over his shoulder. "Funny you should mention that." It was then that Luffy had a hard time seeing the man's face. It was carefully hidden by the hood of his black cloak, save for his mouth, and he'd gone to great efforts to keep it that way. "I too despise fools. Above all, a fool who thinks to pose as a pirate and pass himself off as one." "Why are you wearing hood over your head?" Luffy asked, wondering who this cloaked stranger was. "Who are you?" "I'm keeping my real name and appearance hidden," said the cloaked stranger. "I'm a wanted man by the Marines and world government. They find out I'm here in Sabaody archipelago, then they're going sends a heavy amount of soldiers after me." He paused, thumbing his chin, as if in thought. "Perhaps even a Marine Admiral or two." "You're a pirate?" said Nami. "Yes," the cloaked stranger responded tersely. "Then how about you remove that cloak that covers your face," said Straw Hat Luffy. "And tell us your name and bounty. If your bounty is higher than $70 million beery, maybe I'll even offer you a place in the crew, ha." "No." Cloaked stranger shouted. "Nani?" Everyone panicked as the cloaked stranger said no to the most dangerous pirate alive. "Huh?" Straw Hat Luffy replied in confused tone. "What you mean, no?" "I just said no," said the cloaked stranger. "That's all." "You think that's the answer I want here?" Luffy snarled, reaching for his flintlock pistol. "I'm telling you to take off your cloak and reveal yourself. Do you have any idea who I am, who you're messing with, punk?" Everyone but for the orange-haired woman dropped to the floor at the appearance of the pistol. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I have a bounty of $400 million berry and you're nothing." "So you claim?" The stranger didn't so much as flinch. Staring down the barrel of the gun with something akin to resignation. The orange-haired woman watched the impending standoff and felt a bead of sweat slip down her neck. Had it always been so hot in here, and watched and waited for the standoff to meet its inevitable conclusion. Surprisingly, the man held up a hand palm outward, fingers splayed, then curled into a fist. "Last chance." Luffy crowed, ignorant of his own peril. "Take it off or eat lead." "I wouldn't if I were you," the stranger cautioned. "Bullets won't work on me." With a resounding clack, Luffy pulled back the catch on his pistol. "Go to hell." The man heaved a great and heavy sigh. "Miss?" he murmured softly. "Yes." The orange-haired woman blinked. "Get down." And with that, the bar erupted in a curtain of orange flame. Passing the torch. Nami considered herself to be a practical woman. She had to be, serving as the navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates. Her overbearing logic, greed, and overall reason were practically a necessity when surrounded by a bunch of testosterone-fueled men, most of whom acted like boys and pirates, no less. She had an answer for everything. Every change in the wind, in the currents, for every cloud into the sky, and then some. But she didn't have an answer now. Not for this. Only a moment ago, Monkey D. Luffy faked that he had shot a perfectly harmless stranger. One who had little to no monetary concern whatsoever, claimed to be a master of hockey as well as a pirate, and, apparently, believed that bullets could not harm him. While she found this interesting, the fact that he claimed to be a wanted man whom both the world government and the Navy were pursuing was more than enough to set her threat estimation to a bright "get the hell away from this guy, Red." "Miss?" She blinked. "Get down." Unfortunately, she'd been too mesmerized at the time to even consider fleeing. That, and she really didn't want to turn a blind eye to the fakes who were claiming to be them. That ugly bitch didn't look at Dame Thing like her and give them the satisfaction. Instead, she sat there, her eyes growing ever larger as negotiations broke down between the pirate and the faker, ending in the former taking a mouthful of lead from the latter, to which the former smiled disarmingly. Bang. Imagine her surprise when the bullet went clean through his skull, wedged itself in the wall, and that smile did not fade in the slightest. He'd died on his feet, she supposed. It wasn't exactly the cleanest way to go, but away he had went, or so she'd assumed. Then the first ember settled upon her nose. Nami blinked. Brushed it away, alarmed at this sudden turnabout as well the disbelieving screams offered by the crowd in reply, scrabbling back from the cloaked stranger, as if he were the devil himself. Which, given the eerie circumstances of his supposed death, was a distinct possibility. The cloaked stranger half turned, exposing a blood-red iris over his shoulder. Flames licked across the gaping wound that had severed the left side of his face. But instead of blood and guts and gore as there should have been, there was naught but flame. Glowing tendrils of smoky shadow and flame gathered about the offending injury, forming up on one another after the other, gaining substance and form. Until something miraculous happened. Bereft of the tattered cowl that once shielded it, the ruined portrait that was his face consumed itself in flame and simply closed the wound from the inside out. For a moment, for one blessed moment in the instant before he yanked that blasted cowl back into place, the orange-haired woman saw his face. She recognized it almost instantly, for how could she not? He was a handsome fellow, if intense. But that absent thought was neither here nor there. Oh. My. Gods. Despite herself, despite all her calm, cool, level-headedness, Nami lost the ability to breathe. She'd seen him. She'd seen his face before, many, many times over the past 2 years. His was a face that was known even in Witheria, for tales of his infamy exaggerated or no had spread far and wide, even there. She saw him in those flickering embers of flame and fire, and she wanted to say something, but she could not bring herself to speak the words she wanted so very desperately to say. This is. She was looking at a man. A man amongst men, a man whose very soul was said to be blacker than the ninth circle of hell. A man who murdered whomever dare stand in his way, and a man not to be trifled with. Because his wrath was simply not something that mustn't be aroused. She'd heard the stories. She'd read the papers. This was the one man whom stirred in her both fear and respect. Though whether the former was stronger than the latter remained to be seen. This was. Oi oi oi, young lady. She dimly recalled the warning Mr. Haritas had given her. If you see burning will on Sabaody, will you give him my regards? Nami had dismissed the comment at the time, chalking it up as nothing more than one of the man's many quirks. Thanks to the donation he made, we'll be able to continue our research here for what might be another decade. She hadn't bothered to ask how it was that Mr. Haritas knew one of the most infamous rookies in the Grand Line. Let alone why said criminal would possibly make a donation to something other than whores and booze. She'd been busy at the time, far too busy to take heed of what might have been her only warning. But how could she have known that Mr. Haritas would know? That burning will aka Uzumaki D. Naruto would be on Sabaody Archipelago. It was also at that time that Nami realized something else, something far more devastating than knowing that she'd nearly been duped into accepting a cursed necklace from a potentially chivalrous stranger. No, this was worse than that. Much, much worse. She had looked him in the eye and she hadn't even known. She'd been shooting the breeze with a mass murderer without even knowing it. Oh, this is just too much. His words, the words of the man who had the entire world after his head, gently tugged Nami from her reverie. The infamous rookie had doubled over with one hand clutching at his stomach as though it might burst between his fingers. He was laughing, Nami realized. Incredibly, he seemed to find the fact that he had been shot amusing somehow, and at length, he straightened, standing woodenly and not taking enough care. I came here looking for Monkey D. Luffy. He snickered softly to himself. But you know, I never expected to find him this quickly. Suddenly, he turned, his gaze fixating on Nami with such an intensity that for a moment she thought he might turn on her as well. He didn't. Instead, he looked her up and down, as if truly noticing her for perhaps the first time. Nami felt her cheeks darken, such was the overbearing power of his eyes. Abruptly, he averted them. He chuckled softly as his gaze slid away from her. Ha 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 ha. The formerly cloaked stranger laughed. It was a deep throaty sound, and it chilled her to the bone. Everyone, including the Strawhat pirates, cowered before that laugh. Only the fake Luffy managed to maintain some of his former belligerence. He jammed the flintlock pistol back into its holster, wiped the shock and dismay from his face, and rushed to his feet as though he feared someone would somehow beat him to the punch. Aha. He laughed, painting a smile upon his face when all eyes eventually found their way back to him once again. Why yes, it's just as I suspected. The great Burning Will has decided to join us, after all. Seeing their captain's bravado feigned though it most certainly was, the crew of imposters seemed to regain some of their former bluster. It was only Burning Will who smiled in kind. Oh, I'll join you alright. He paused, smiling sardonically. But first, I have a question. Sure. The Luffy seemed to be rapidly regaining his composure, Nami realized, and her own awe at the sight of Burning Will was rapidly evaporating. She found herself making for the door, all respect for this so-called criminal lost and forgotten. Then an unusual inquiry stopped her cold. She paused, her curiosity piqued, and before long, it became clear to her just what kind of man this Burning Will truly was. Tell me, Luffy, Burning Will continued with that deadly soft tone of his, why waste a bullet on me like that? Aren't you a rubberman? The silence was deafening. Hey, that's right. Someone whispered. I heard that Strawhat was made of rubber, wasn't he? Yeah, that's right. Another added. But then why use a pistol? Still another asked. SHH. Quiet. He'll hear you. For a moment, fear seemed to prevail over the bar patrons. Then Burning Will took a step forward. It was a small step, nothing imposing about it whatsoever, but the intent behind it remained clear. Peering upward at Luffy, he reached into his breast pocket. Everyone cringed aside in terror, expecting him to pull out a weapon of some sort. Only to flush with shame as he exposed a wanted poster bearing the latter's face. Also, would you mind telling me why you don't look a damn thing like your wanted poster? He asked genially. In that moment, as the whispers grew ever louder, Nami mentally reassessed her opinion of Burning Will. Now would have been a perfectly reasonable time for her to leave, as she could not hope to gain any coin from staying to watch the impending brawl. Like a certain pride she knew, Burning Will was well renowned for his legendary temper and an annoying tendency to incinerate those who vexed him. It was for this reason, if not her own personal satisfaction, that Nami observed the proceedings with great amusement. She couldn't be bothered to deal with the fakes herself, of course. But witnessing their downfall would still be all too satisfying. Especially at the hands of this rather handsome pirate. Now, if only he'd take off that blast cowl too so she could get a good look at his face. Meanwhile, the tension was reaching a breaking point. You better watch yourself, buddy, Luffy snarled at his fellow rookie in a dangerous tone. You might be a hotshot with a $350 million berries on your head, but my bounty is $400 million berry, which is higher than yours. Meaning I'm 10 times more dangerous than you can never be. He loomed over Burning Will with his girth, clearly trying to use his reputation in a feeble attempt at intimidation. Yes, and more's the pity. Burning Will sighed. Unfortunately, you're not the Luffy I'm looking for. What? Burning Will cocked his head to one side, the smile dropping from his face to shatter across the floor like so much broken glass. Abruptly, the bounty poster in his hand began to fizzle and wither, burning itself from the bottom up. In a matter of seconds, it had been reduced to a pile of ash on the floor. Now it was that everyone's attention fell upon him, this stranger who had not once but twice demonstrated the powers of flame and fire. Hey, did he just? Nami watched as the realization flowered in their eyes and withered in equal measure. She watched as they shrank back from him, men, women, and children alike. Watched as Naruto brought his palms together and called upon his element for the third and final time. When they parted, he was clutching a brand, no, a pommel, no, was that a hilt of some sort. Weaving streaks of orange-yellow flames flung themselves between them as his hand straddled the shadow flame once more. But this wasn't an etching of fire. It was fire inside the blade. Where the crimson burned, and for several inches past it, the sword became transparent as glass. It is as if the limb itself had become flame, and that flame banished the darkness to the trees and was something almost unholy within its majesty. Now spread from shoulder to fingers, his hand blazed out flame, nearly 3.5 feet in front of him, and then died down. Nami was on the verge of forsaking this endeavor altogether before Naruto smiled and brought the blade around in a sweeping arc. Cold dread froze the lot of them further as the pirate placed his hands further apart. He'll set the bar on fire. He brought the other hand up and flexed it, and his fingers closed around the fires. Held them, and the blade rematerialized. Simply appearing from the chakra glowing reddish-black as was his skin, the crescent hook of a tip dangled from a relatively simple and not at all oblong pole of a handle, one that he shouldered it deprecatingly. Naruto didn't seem to mind at all that he was holding a weapon composed of more flame than actual steel, and if he did, he wasn't doing much to convey that annoyance. Once more, the gaze of burning will found hers. His eyes narrowed slightly, a silent, unspoken warning that told her to, quite simply, get down. Hagitsuchi. By the time she did think to drop to the floor, a screen of orange blaze was discharged without warning. While everyone felt the strong heat of the orange flame, the only ones who absorbed the worst of the orange fire were the impostor Straw Hat Pirates. Unable to believe their eyes nor their ears, the unlucky impostors were flung clear out of both bar and battle, sent flying across the next street, where they caromed into the stall of an unfortunate dung vendor. Yet strangely, the only one that was left standing was the mysterious stranger who seems unharmed by the flames. It almost seemed as if the orange cone of destruction might have originated from his very flesh. But that was impossible. The only person she'd ever seen using such an ability had been dead for 2 years now. The only other man who held such an ability had vanished from the face of the earth for 6 months after making a name for himself in battle and blood and booze. Now, as a curtain of orange flame swept itself between them, roiling, boiling, baring its fangs with a mind-numbing intensity, she began to understand. With a squelching soft sound they retreated inward, forming human flesh once more. Sorry about the mess, the cloaked stranger apologized to the shocked bar owner, paying for the damages inflicted by the fire. I believe this should cover the damages, plus a little interest for making me those last 10 bowls. The owner gawped as he beheld the stack of berry that had just been handed to him. Muttering to himself that he'd never seen so much money in my life, he offered his most humble gratitude and swiftly departed. Nami's sweat dropped. Is this guy for real? But before she could hope to voice her opinion on the matter, the eyes of burning will found hers once more. They were no longer the smoldering scarlet they'd been previously, she realized, though the thought of staring into serene sapphire brought her little comfort. She could still see the rage burning beyond his vision. At length, he smiled. It was a warm smile, this one, bellying the flames he had so blatantly released upon Sabaody Archipelago. He chuckled, it was a soft, amused sound. I see you heeded my warning, Miss Navigator. He let the statement hang, unadorned between them. And for that, you have my thanks. There was a strange twinkling within his eyes as he spoke. Because Nami held no illusion that this vagabond did not know who she was, having ascertained her true identity. All that remained was to see what he'd do with the information he'd gleaned from her. As with most men, he didn't fail to disprove her suspicions. Nami. He spoke suddenly, looking as if he'd just had the mother of all epitomes. That's your name, isn't it? So you're the navigator of the Straw Hat crew, are you? Like hell I'm admitting that. Nami thought to herself. No way. Absolutely not. I don't know what you're talking about. She really didn't want to reveal her identity. Bad enough that Burning Will was here on Sabaody Archipelago. Bad in it that he'd already raised a bar and barbecued a band of ungrateful impostors. But it would truly be bad for her if she was to be recognized in the company of such a man, one who had the world nobles breathing down his neck, no less. For all your skill, you're a poor liar. Naruto sighed and sent her deception crashing down around her ears. I'll ask you again. You're Nami, are you not? Like I said, Nami began anew, desperately hoping to impress upon the rookie the need for silence. I have no idea who or what you're talking about. Do not lie to me. For a moment he was fire and brimstone again, and Nami could see the murderous intent raging just beyond the veil of those crystalline orbs. Suddenly the likeness of herself was thrust before her face. Because Nami was looking at herself. In the form of a wanted poster. I recognized you from the moment I walked into that bar, and your face has only grown even more beautiful than the one in this poster. Now, I will ask you again. Are you or are you not, Nami-san? Even more beautiful. She wondered at the compliment for a moment longer before his tone convinced her to comply. Yes. She relented, albeit softly. What do you want with me? Nothing, really. Naruto answered. Eh? Really? Naruto grinned foxily. I just wanted to have the honor of meeting the infamous cat burglar face to face. He mused this aloud, the smile simply refusing to leave his face. I must say, however, your bounty does not do you justice. Or does the world government truly see you as so little a threat? He shrugged then, dismissing the matter as an afterthought. But I digress. Say, if your captain was anywhere nearby, you'd tell me, wouldn't you? You see, I've been searching for him for the past 2 years, and now I believe that he might be here in Sabaody. And why might you be looking for him? Nami demanded. Naruto's expression darkened instantly. I've a score to settle with him. The cold pang of horror seized upon Nami's heart. A snake of dread coiling inside her gut, a snake of losing everything she'd ever held dear and not knowing the price. The look in his eyes was a strange one. torn somewhere between amusement and nostalgia, in direct contrast to the stabbing spike of panic that stabbed through her breast. How could he say such things and remain nonchalant? How could he have a bone to pick with him, of all people? With Luffy? What on earth had that idiot done this time? Angering one of the world's foremost pirates, whose bounty was already so dangerously close to his own. If Burning Will had any business with Luffy, then it certainly wouldn't prove to be pleasant. Of this, if nothing else, she was certain. Fury washed Nami to her toes. If Luffy truly was in danger, and it was any fault of hers for letting Burning Will find him. I think it's best you get out of here, Naruto said suddenly. Although that attack may have knocked the wind out of them, they won't stay down on count and may take it out on you if they come back. A fleeting fixation of concern flitted across his features. And if they're anything like who I think they are, then they will be back. So you're just going to leave? Nami stated flatly. Just like that. It's obvious you don't know where he is, Naruto answered. Therefore, I see no point in haranguing you further. Hey, Nami called out to the stranger who was heading to the doorway. Wait a second. Nami, someone in the room called her name. Hearing her name called out, Nami turned to where the one that called her name. In that direction was someone she fully recognized. It was Usopp, but far different than before. Instead of a tanned, slim teenager, he was now taller and muscular. He was wearing what appeared to be a new pair of goggles around his neck and has some ear protectors on. He also now has a little goatee along with a new white sun cap he wears on his head. In addition, he has a new pair of rolled-up yellow pants with red suspenders and a couple of walking boots. He has a brand red shoulder bag, but he still has his white-blue striped wristband on his left arm. Usopp? Is that you? Yeah, it's me, he replied. It's great seeing you, Nami, you seem to have changed. So have you, Nami responded happily. You were here all the time. I was, Usopp answered. I was about to use a new technique I learned on that guy that bothering you until that fellow in dark cloak steps in. You know who he is? No, Nami replied. He was looking for something in town. He looked familiar, but I can't seem to recall who he is. Well, we better do what he said Usopp. Because those imposters he blew away, they'll be back. While the two of them quickly left, the imposters emerged from where they fell burned, injured, humiliated and angry. They didn't heed the fact that they could have all too easily been burned to a crisp by the legendary Burning Will. At least, Monkey D. Luffy didn't seem to recognize that. Find that guy, fake Luffy angrily snarled. Shoot him on sight. At the same time, the cloaked stranger who happened to be Uzumaki D. Naruto was making all due haste from the scene he had created. He'd seen the looks on their faces, all of them. They'd seen his face. That navigator certainly had. While it was indeed regrettable that she knew next to nothing where the whereabouts of Monkey D. Luffy were concerned, there was nothing that could be done about it, and thus, it was time to move on in his search. For the time being. Naruto knew he'd just pulled himself back into the limelight. While he didn't regret in helping that orange-haired woman, the last thing he needed was for the Marines to find out he'd taken shelter on Sabaody. If they did, they'd call in an Admiral to look for him, certainly. Should that happen, not only would the fighting destroy the mangroves, but the chance of finding Luffy as well. He couldn't risk a battle to distract him from his destination, especially with Akainu. Even though Naruto is confident in his fighting abilities, he was still not yet ready to face Akainu yet. He needs the time and place if he was going to be ready to avenge Ace's death. That is why he has spent years mastering his powers to full measurement should he face Akainu. He had thought Akainu will be the one sent to come after him after he attacked Mariejoa, but instead was Kizaru. As his perverted mentor once told him, always pick the right time and right place to fight your enemy. Naruto also thought about those imposters back at the bar. Whoever those idiots were, they didn't realize what kind of dangerous situation they got themselves into. While they appeared to dress in the similar fashion of the Straw Hat Pirates, they looked nothing like the originals, let alone act the part right. The leader that was pretending to be Luffy was the worst of them. That fat fuck should be grateful I didn't kill him outright. Naruto groused aloud to himself. He reminded him of the world nobles, though rather less extreme. Awfully cruel and arrogant, using Luffy's status to act with impunity, getting away with everything while the men and women around him lived in utter fear of his reputation. Surely he must have been a brilliant liar if he was able to fool everyone into thinking he's the real deal. But he's an idiot for thinking he could possibly emerge unscathed. Also stupider than he imagined. While the impostor Luffy may not realize it, his arrogance was leading to his downfall far sooner than he realized. And to the imminent arrival of an Admiral. Meanwhile, in Mariejoa. What you mean you're coming with me? Kizaru asked in drawn disbelief. There's no need for two admirals. There are two extremely dangerous pirates roaming around on Sabaody Archipelago, Akainu cut him off. Not only Straw Hat Monkey D. Luffy, but Burning Will Uzumaki D. Naruto as well. This truly is a job for two admirals, if not three. He let the statement hang unadorned between the two of them. The silence was deafening. For a terrifying second it seemed like Kizaru would outright refuse the offer of his fellow Admiral. Then he sighed. And why is it so important that you come with me?" he asked again. "Burning will," came Akainu's curt reply. "Oh ho." Kizaru arched an eyebrow. "So that's the reason, is it?" Akainu cringed, refusing to admit that he had a personal stake in this. Because it was personal. He'd been humiliated by a certain pirate nearly a year ago, though said pirate had fled from him rather than fight when Jewelry Bonnie had quite literally been snatched out of his grip and impelled down. Most speculated that Burning Will's infiltration of prisons past were solely to gain follows to his cause. Akainu knew better. Jewelry Bonnie hadn't even spent all of an hour in the infamous undersea galley before another nameless prisoner had joined her. Akainu hadn't taken any notice, nor did he care for that matter, who appeared to be in her crew. All he knew was that, somehow, Burning Will had snuck into Impel Down, massacred the guards, defeated Magellan with substantial ease, and made his departure. And after his escape, amongst the countless hordes of prisoners that could not be recaptured, was Jewelry Bonnie. He shouldn't be dwelling on such a simple matter, but still, it irked him. He'd caught up with a so-called escapee, only to have his ship burned out from beneath him, whilst Burning Will and his fellow fugitives made their escape. But Borsellino was peering at him expectantly, and thusly, Akainu had to grace him with a reply of his own. "There's no doubt in my mind Monkey D. Luffy is stronger than he was before 2 years ago." Akainu continues. "He's probably acquired the use of haki by now. And Burning Will Naruto, this is the same man that defeated you a year ago, and he's bound to have only grown stronger by then." He pointedly left out the fact that it was either him or her that had to accompany Kizaru. Given that Aokiji was now the new fleet admiral in place of Sengoku. Naturally, they'd been expected to find a replacement for Aokiji in the last 2 years. And they had. Unfortunately, the replacement for Aokiji had an annoying tendency that involved the careless slaughter of not only the pirates she was assigned to capture. But that was neither here nor there. He wanted Burning Will alive. Therefore, she wasn't to be permitted on Sabaody for the duration of this assignment, lest half the population of Sabaody find themselves massacred. Honestly, that bloodthirsty woman scared him shitless. "You don't have to bring that up," Kizaru complained wistfully, referring to the bruising he'd received at the hands of Burning Will. "It's embarrassing." Flashback. Mariejoa was burning. Great columns of flame swept through the spire. Sweeping clouds of ash and smoke across the whole of Mariejoa. They devoured everything without pause, sparing only those terrified slaves who fled for their very lives, some risking a glance back at the strange swirling inferno that raged behind them, occasionally taking the form of a man at times, a demon the next, then something else entirely and altogether. For these were no ordinary flames. Contrary to the whims of the wind, the fire seemed to move of its own accord, barreling down not on the slaves who tried to escape its wrath, but whomever was foolish enough to dare impede their path. Those who sought safety and shelter from these flames of justice found that safety, and those who wished otherwise, those who served the world nobles, found themselves charred and burnt and branded in recompense for their temerity. There was naught but travesty for those who tried to recapture the escapees, fishman and giant and human alike. All were freed. None were left behind. And all the while, the once proud land of Mariejoa burned beneath these flames. It was to this scene that the Marine Task Force and Admiral Kizaru arrived. It was within this carnage, this chaos, that they first heard the sound of screaming, of shouting, and, most eerily, of laughter. "Spread out." Kizaru began to issue the men their orders almost immediately. "He should be here somewhere, The dim, cool blue illumination spread across the plaza, gradually brightening. It started as a whisper. Then, all in a rush, he came into focus. Eyes burning with blue flame, puffs of fire escaping his lips with every breath, body alternatively invisible, wispy as black smoke and gleaming hard iridescent black metal muscle. He appeared in their midst without warning, then vanished. There one moment, gone the next. With his sudden departure, so too did 7 Marines forsake their bodies for the underworld. Suddenly, Kizaru was alone in the plaza. He stood there for a moment, blinking, slowly registering the loss of his troops. The bluish glow was already fading, rounding a nearby corner with an indefatigable speed. Only to find itself headed off by Kizaru. The Admiral was already fading into existence as the robed figure skidded to a halt before him, its eyes little more than twin sparkles of crimson in the twilight. An impasse was struck. For a moment the assassin stood there, bouncing on the balls of his feet while he considered his next move. Borsellino wasn't too accommodating in that regard. "Yasukani no Magatama," he drawled lazily. Piercing pinpricks of light lanced out from his fingertips, skewering the shadowy assailant. Riddling him with holes as though he were cottage cheese. The silhouette did not cry out under the barrage, nor did he flinch or whimper. Much to Kizaru's annoyance. Instead he answered with a gush of fire. A veritable sheet of violet indigo flame rushed forth against the harsh jewels of infinitesimal brilliance and set the entire courtyard awash with flame. Oh? Borsellino blinked as black spots speckled across his vision for a moment. You're a Loja type, aren't you? The intruder did not honor him with a response. At least, not of the verbal realm. His heel crackled outward, little more than an electric blue blur, and for the first time in nearly a decade, Kizaru tasted blood in his mouth. The flinty, acrid taste caught him off guard, lending his attacker just enough time to plug his knuckles into the Admiral's gut. Damn, but the boy was quick. Then there was pain. Pain, searing and agonizing, pain, the likes of which he'd never felt before. Even as he felt one of his ribs splinter beneath the blow. Hockey. Somehow, the boy had imbued both blows with hockey, so much so that he was able to deal actual damage to his physical form. The lad doubled back and Borsellino braced himself to dissolve before the next attack could find his face, or worse. And then, as suddenly as they had come, the flames were gone. So too, was their master. Kizaru blinked a heat haze away from his eyes and spat the blood from his mouth as he struggled to take in the signs he'd been given by his body. The boy darted out of sight around the next corner, nearly loosing the hood of his cowl as a stray beam took out the hem of his robe. Then he was gone again. Undeniably irate, Admiral Kizaru stormed around the corner. Ryusenka. Kizaru stood in dumbfounded disbelief as he materialized directly in the gaping maw of an inferno. And still the intruder reached out with the flames, past him farther, farther, farther still, until his element was barely even recognizable. KK Cram. An unspeakably bright flare peeled open the horizon behind them. Despite the shouts and the screams of his men, Kizaru didn't turn. He'd seen this technique before, already he knew what he would find there, should he show his back. The destruction of their fleet, ruination surrounding them, one and all. With the loss of his ride home, he stormed into the keep, ready to do battle with this flaming apparition whose abilities so greatly resembled those of Portuga's D-Ace. Still, he couldn't believe his eyes. He sat motionless as God atop the mountain of corpses, the demon awaited their approach. Set upon his throne of destruction he inclined his head politely, looking down upon them for the ants that he clearly thought them to be. So still was he, that Borsellino almost mistook him for a statue at first. But a statue did not move, nor did it laugh as this one did. Here was a rare breed of man. The first man to actually murder a Tenryubito since the founding of the world government itself. He was smiling. Well, now are you the one who did this? He asked through a strained grimace. Did I do this, you ask? The man laughed. It was a deep throaty sound. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Remember it well, you who allow the subjugation of those who are oppressed. He beckoned, indicating the chaos and destruction that had not so long ago been the holy land of Mariejua. Do you see this? He asked. This is your justice. This is the sin that the world government permits because the children of the 20 kings desire it to be so because they wish it to be. It is filth. It is perversion. It is decay. He scoffed, rising from his throne of bodies and flesh. Tell me, Admiral, do you know why it is that I have not simply destroyed this postule of a city? He stood woodenly, not taking enough care. I will tell you. Were I to destroy this place, this Mariejua, I would leave no evidence of my existence behind. Therefore, I have decided instead to wait for one of your so-called champions of justice, a Marine Admiral, to find me in this place so that I could make my cause clear. Kizaru snapped his heel forward. Naruto twisted, arching his back at the very last instant. Instead of striking him in the face, as the Admiral had intended, the wisp of light banked overhead, narrowly missing its given target. Where it screamed off into the horizon. The blonde held his pose for a moment longer before he straightened. Bending at the knees with all the grace of a fluid dancer, such was the ease with which he rose again. I warn you, do not underestimate me so easily, Naruto pointed out. I have mastered all 3 forms of hockey. I tell you what's not going to be easy, Kizaru began to warn Naruto. After what you did, the world government is not going rest until they catch you. I'm sure they going place an enormous bounty on your head if you're able to fight me evenly. Yet even if you kill me here, there will be other that will still coming after you. He sneered with a smile as he'd always done, but the pirate's remark failed to leave him anything less than amused. I'm not trying to kill you, Naruto declared. Not yet. I've made sure that the others manage to get away. As I said previously, fight me at your own risk, but know that you shall not pass, regardless of the outcome. He clapped his hands together, and suddenly his hands were wreathed in flame. But these were more than any flame. All manner of color and perception clouded his fingertips. Wreathing his hands in various shades of oranges, reds, yellow, indigo, violet, black, and beyond. Kizaru pondered these flames and their eerie properties before speaking. I take you won't surrender, then? Kizaru ventured. That depends. The burning specter blew a drawn-out breath. Are you truly intent on fighting for a cause so unjust? Now, isn't that a silly question? Kizaru drawled. "I've come here just for you." The Burning Man did not find this amusing. "So you've come to take my head, Marine Admiral." He swept his fingers forward in a grandiose gesture, encompassing the ruination surrounding them. "I must say, you have disappointed me. I'd hoped that you, of all people, would understand. But if you do not, then perhaps you'll fare better than the others." "Sure." He shrugged his shoulders, and the cloak fell to the wayside, smoldering away in a trail of embers. "If you desire my head, by all means. Try and take it." He raised the flames to the surface of his skin and brought them not only into his arms but around his face. He allowed them to break through his scalp and form a living crown. A blatant mockery toward those he had slaughtered. There was pain there in his face, pain as they broke the skin and as they broke through channels of power that he had blocked long ago. He was powerful again now. Powerful and dread. "What do you think you are, Fisher Tiger?" Kizaru challenged Naruto on that fact. "I'm sure you know what happened to." "Not at all." "Not at all," Naruto replied. "I originally came to Mariejoa to save a friend. But after what I saw there I decided to free every slave that was imprisoned in that living hell. I can understand why Fisher attacked Mariejoa in the first place. For that he has my deepest respect and admiration, though I can never truly hope to measure up to him." Seething on the face of his skin, the flames hissed and spat at a distance between them, threatening to devour the Admiral at the slightest provocation. But the only difference between you and Fisher Tiger," Kizaru pointed out, "is that you killed 3 world nobles. It's my job to bring to justice and see you answer for crimes." He too was drawing upon his own power, willing himself to ignore the visible strain that had been inflicted upon his body already. Dark wisps of shadowy flame did their level best to intrude upon the light he was exuding and failed. Filling one half of the courtyard keep with light, the other, with flame. "Now," Naruto sneered. "If you think you can take me down, bring it." Tendrils of smoke flame burst from the strange tattoos etched into his wrists, visible even amongst the etchings of shadow and flame. They began to take shape, form, abandoning the ethereal and favoring the material. For a moment, Kizaru marveled at it. He watched, witness to the strange shaping of the serpentine creature, almost as if it resembles Dragon of the Darkness Flame. The mighty beast of white and black flames plowed forward, jaws gaping wide. For him. For its prey, its victim, onrushing with such a speed that it occurred to Kizaru that he'd best move out of the way before it intercepted his current trajectory and a hand seized upon his shoulder, stopping him in his tracks. "Going somewhere, Kizaru-san." And then there was only blackness. Then flashback. "What's wrong with you, Kizaru?" The harsh grating tone of Akainu irrevocably dragged Borsellino from his memories. He went to speak, but for some strange reason there was blood in his mouth. Why on earth would there be blood in his mouth, now, of all times? He drifted amidst these thoughts for a moment before he recognized the dull, aching throb in his mouth as his own, as his tongue, protesting the forces that had been applied unto it. He'd bitten his tongue, Kizaru realized. The flinty, metallic tang tasted hollow in his mouth somehow, leaving him with an eerie sense of foreboding. He doubted from the look of Akainu's face that his fellow admiral felt anything like it at all. And why would he? Akainu was too wrapped up in catching Burning Will to think of much else. It mattered to him only that they inflict the most righteous, heinous justice upon this man whom dared to do with the world as he pleased. Still, Kizaru had been prompted to reconsider Sakazuki's proposition. "Say," Kizaru began, "Sakazuki. Perhaps 2 admirals would be best after all." Meanwhile, back on Sabaody Archipelago. "What do you mean you can't find him?" Fake Luffy raged impotently. "He has blonde hair, blue eyes, and whiskers for Crisix. How many guys like that do you see around here, huh? He's Burning Will, so he can't be that hard to find, so find him. Now." While he continued to swear and spit and spew all other manner of improper babble, a large pack suddenly swung around and bumped into him. "Ooh!" he cried, falling into an unglorious heap. "Oh, did I bump into you?" the hooded person asked. "Sorry about that." Everyone gawped. "Does that guy not know who Straw Hat Luffy is? He's so dead." "Hold it right there." The hooded person in the parka turned, exposing his face. His was a young face, a face that should have been easily recognized. Were it not for the ridiculous fake mustache he was currently wearing, someone might have indeed recognized him and the oversized pack which he was wearing. Thankfully, they did not. You just bumped into me on purpose, didn't you?" Fake Luffy snarled. "Do you know who I am? You trying to start something, huh, punk? You made a fool of me in front of all these people. Me, a pirate with a $400 million berry bounty. Now, on your knees," he demanded, prodding a gun against the cheek of the silently unamused pirate who had not a clue as to what was going on. "Tremble in fear. And beg for mercy." "No thanks." The hooded person in the parka mumbled. "I'm in a bit of a hurry, so." "That's it. You little runt." The end. One burst of hockey later. Then Fake Luffy and co. found themselves taking a very long nap. Meanwhile, even further away on Sabaody archipelago. The galleon was massive. Sails that would soon be fat with wind were currently furled. A deck which often bore the brunt of many scurrying feet was now pristine near to perfection. Everything about it, this ship which bore a massive lion's head at its tip, was magnificent. Perhaps even more so, considering it had been lying here in wait for the last 2 years. Approaching this masterfully made craft, with its skull and crossbones held high. Fluttering in the breeze, could only marvel at in outright awe. Hence the reason Uzumaki D. Naruto was gawping wordlessly. This truly was a ship among ships. So, this is the Sunny, huh? He whistled softly. What a ship. Rather fitting, for the man who would one day become king of the pirates. Its outlandish over-the-top style seemed to be a perfect fit for the Straw Hat crew, although none of them seemed to be present at the moment. That dampened his spirits a bit. He really would have liked to have met at least someone other than Nami and her outright hostile approach to things. Oh. A deep booming voice rang out over the deck. Oi. Who in the hell are you? Hello. Naruto blinked, shouldering his pack. Who is that? Is someone there? Abruptly, his enthusiasm surged to the fore. He failed to recognize the voice, but then again, save for Nami, he'd never known met any of the original Straw Hat crew to begin with. That one of them might be on the ship lifted his spirits considerably. Might it be the pirate hunters Olo, Blackleg Sanji, Sajaking, or… Not another step if you know what's good for you. A harsh clack drew his attention, then a single red dot hovered upon his chest, emitted by the thin strand of light the like of which he'd never seen before. A targeting system, perhaps. Seconds later, nearly a dozen other gleaming red periods joined it, leaving a grand total of 12 weapons, locked upon various parts of his body. Who's there? He called across the deck. Is anyone home? You bet your ass I am. Naruto had been expecting some semblance of welcome. Instead, he found himself face to face with the strangest looking human being he had ever seen in his life. Words alone could not suffice. Nor could they help to describe him, this massive muscular monstrosity of mirthful metallic substance. With one of those giant hands, he tilted up his sunglasses and peered across the expanse that separated in less than an instant. Oi, bastard. He called. Keep your hands off Sonny. Alright, Naruto held up his hands. I'm not touching. See. What the hell do you want? That earned a response. Naruto puffed out a stray strand of flame from his lips. Is Luffy here? Luffy? The strange man bot blinked. Just how the hell do you know him, huh? Would you believe me if I tell you? Naruto asked. Probably not. The cyborg conceded. You're not the first to try and play that card. Now get out of here. If you'll just listen. I won't. To what I have to say. Scram. I'm sure you'll. Skedaddle. Understand. At lost. What I have to. Beat it, trash. Trash. Now, Naruto considered himself to be a patient man. And with good reason. Long had he suffered through the last 2 years of endless searching, endless training, making his share of friends and foes along the way. Long had he looked, high and low, for all the secrets that came with the subtle but dangerous art of haki and of the Maramara no Mi and the whereabouts man he'd so fervently sought. But today after encountering obstacle after obstacle after obstacle his patience was at an end. Here, at the cusp of completing the quest that had consumed the last 2 years of his life, being insulted and affronted at every turn. Something had to give. Urusai. He bellowed, a great gust of flame sweeping from his form. Will you just shut the hell up and let me talk, huh, Bakayaru? For a moment, the cyborg cowered, then Naruto felt a round fizzle through his flesh. He paused, peering down at the now gaping hole in his chest. Frowned. Watched as it closed. Then, before the cyborg could fire another shot, he came forward. Listen you. His boots thudded upon the deck as he landed, bringing himself face to face with the strangely clad cyborg. He made it all of 3 steps before another shot sputtered out of his chest, turned to ash upon contact. He permitted himself a small smile. Then he was upon the cyborg. His hands flashed outward, once, twice, 3 times, batting aside a great overhand sweep with one and striking barehanded with the other. It was an abysmal failure. He neglected the use of his flames during the attack. He couldn't bear the thought of damaging the ship, but in the end, all it gave him was a pair of swollen knuckles. Hands throbbing, he backed off, leering furiously. Dio? Naruto yelped. What the hell are you made of, cast iron? Atsui. The cyborg yowled, likewise waving his hand up and down comically as well. Hot. What the hell are you made of, Konoyaru? Why I oughta. Frankie, a voice like living liquid interjected softly, there's no need for violence. Frankie? Naruto blinked. Wait. So you're actually Frankie? Oh. The strange cyborg shouted suddenly, eyes sparkling, that vuus. He turned, as always, striking a pose, that buity. Naruto twisted, a blue red ursa slowly reappearing over his shoulder. That neeus beauty can only be. For the first time in his life, Uzumaki D. Naruto was truly, utterly, speechless. Despite all the majesty her eyes held, keeping his gaze focused upon her face was quickly proving to be its own a trial, thanks in part to the open blouse and the glorious sight that lay within. Naruto felt his cheeks inexplicably darken as a result. Then he chastised himself with a shake of the head. He was a pirate for Christ's. So why couldn't he stop staring at a pair of. My eyes are up here, if you don't mind. Her voice gently tugged him from his reverie. She had a gentle look about her, and it was then, in that instant, that he realized the identity of this buck's beauty. Like a robin. Naruto croaked out in disbelief. You're looking well, yourself. The blonde blanched. Well shit. Conflagration. Listen up men, fake Luffy, now fully recovered pronounced before a crowd of pirates. You may not know Theseus' face now, but from here on out every one of you is a member of my crew, the Straw Hat Pirates. Once I become the king of the pirates, the impostor continued. You guys are going to be crew of the Pirate King. And for that goal you all will serve as my arms and legs in the adventure that are to come. All the pirates cheered by the fake Luffy's words. It's like a dream come true, said one pirate. I can't believe we get joined the notorious crew of the man who destroyed Enies lobby, created chaos at Impel Down, and charged into the heart of the Whitebeard War. This legendary pirate is going to be our captain, another cheered. He's really a candidate for the title of Pirate King. But before we set sail for the new world, fake Luffy continued, biting off every single word as if it were flint, we need to teach those a lesson for disrespecting me. And one of them is known as Burning Will Uzumaki T. Naruto. For a terrifying second, there was silence. It was deafening. Like a mighty wave. So too his words rippled out amongst those that had assembled to become his subordinates, plastering their faces with expressions of shock, awe, and in exceptionally rare cases, fear. There wasn't a single pirate alive that hadn't heard that name. All the pirates gawped at their captain and what he just said. Burning Will Uzumaki T. Naruto. They thought he was joking, such were their expressions. Monkey D. Luffy wanted revenge. On the only man who had dared to murder not one, not two, but three Tenryubito and escape with hundreds upon hundreds of slaves, not to mention equally priceless treasures and artifacts, and invaded Impel Down, no less. The infamous rookie who, given enough time, might very well fill the vacancy left by Edward Newgate, one of the four now reduced to 3 Yonkou. Their captain wanted the head of Burning Will brought before him like some spoil of war. No way. Impossible. Truly, if there was a man more terrifying than Straw Hat Luffy, then Burning Will clearly fit the bill. At length, members of the newly reformed Straw Hat Pirates began to murmur amongst themselves, with a complete and utter lack of regard to captain's orders. Burning Will Uzumaki T. Naruto. Gashed Albion, another of the rookie pirates joining the imposter Straw Hat Pirates, repeated in a shocked tone. Damn, that makes my bounty of $92 million berries look like chump change. No way, gasped lip service Dottie, another rookie pirate whose head was worth $88 million. He's here in Sabaody archipelago. But though he vanished forever, one of the pirates said, quaking with fear. This is not good, another pirate answered fearfully. That guy tends to attract an admiral from miles away. Which mean there a marine admiral may be on his way here by now, a third pirate cried out. But there's more. Fake Luffy brayed, wheezing in a brash tone that would make even a donkey cringe. Now there's only one reason I gathered you all here today. Some low-life scumbags claim to be his friends, and, as such, they too, have had the nerve to disrespect me, your beloved boss. And they are still somewhere here in the archipelago. I want you to hunt them down and drag them, kicking and screaming to me. And then that so-called legend will come running over here like the fool he is. Jayahaha. You mean if we hostages, Burning Will won't harm us? A stray voice murmured. That's right. Someone stammered. If we take his friends captive then there's no way he'd lay so much as a finger on us. Yeah. Their logic continued to degenerate further, much to the ire of a single pirate among them. He watched the fools bolster themselves with false hope, with the delusion that, by taking hostages, their lives could somehow be spared from the wrath of the man who'd once burned an entire island to ashes in a fit of rage. The fools. They had no idea their lives would soon be made forfeit. Kami, may you have mercy on the fools. Cackled a man of such infamy that those around him, his brother included, shivered in fear. Blood Spatter Caribou displayed no such fear. He, with a bounty of $210 million berries, didn't fear the reputation of the man who rumor has it had once fought off the likes of Admiral Kizaru himself and managed to escape from Akainu with only superficial injuries. Nay, this pirate did not fear this man. Because fear was an emotion as alien to him as mercy and kindness were any pirate, only Moreso. He too, remained utterly ignorant of the man with the fake mustache being led toward them by fake Zoro and fake Sanji. So fixated was he upon Burning Will in fact that for the moment that he even forgot to bury the Marine scout that had oh so foolishly tried to shoot him not an instant ago. He left that man's fate up to his brother Korobu and those of his faithful pirate crew. Well he waited and watched and willed away the minutes with his wily plotting. So you've come at last, eh Burning Will? His eyes were filled with hatred, his soul with vengeance. Yes by all means, come. Come here Burning Will, to Grove number 46. Because I'll be waiting. And this time I'll finally have my revenge for what you did to me all those years ago. Meanwhile. Achoo. Many miles from Grove number 46, Naruto suddenly sneezed. Bless you. Robin chimed pleasantly. Ah, thanks. Naruto raised his gaze to meet her own. It was a mistake. Once again, he was stricken speechless. He took in the large eyes, perfectly coiffed hair, clear skin, full lips, and lean firm curves, and he marveled at her. Hers was a beauty beyond describing, but ultimately, it was the eyes that ensnared him. Her eyes were cool, twin pools of crystal blue, not unlike his own. Hers were eyes that knew pain, but at some point that pain had been taken to pieces. It had been dissected, disassembled, examined from every angle, and then, summarily conquered. Despite all the majesty her eyes held, keeping his gaze focused upon her face was quickly proving to be its own a trial, thanks in part to the open blouse and the glorious sight that lay within. Naruto felt his cheeks inexplicably darken as a result. Then he chastised himself with a shake of the head. He was a pirate for Chrisix. So why couldn't he stop staring at a pair of. Haven't we been through this already? Once more, her voice gently tugged him from his reverie. Once more, it wasn't for very long. He had a fleeting glimpse of her face, then the details swarmed him like a plague of locusts. Devouring what little restraint that he had left. The sudden lack of tension triggered the fire within and suddenly, he inexplicably, undeniably, hot. He felt the flames boil in his body, his blood, and, with great effort, he quelled them. Pushed them back down, so that he might focus on the task at hand. The woman had a gentle look about her, and it was then, in that instant, that Naruto realized the identity of this buxom beauty. Unlike Frankie, she was instantly recognizable. Because the last 2 years had done little to diminish her beauty. On the contrary. Time had only enhanced it. She smiled softly, and ultimately, it was that dangerous, deadly smile that sealed his fate and won his heart all over again. It was then in the silence, as her eyes entreated him for an answer, that Burning Will could hold his tongue no longer. It had been years since he'd seen her last. That last little fleeting glimpse of her smile, her words, having etched itself into his memory forever. Now, his own words threatened to overwhelm him. Say something. Something. Anything at all you blasted fool. Just stop standing there, stop gawping at her like she's a piece of meat. It's been a long time, Naruto. Whump. Naruto took the words like a blow to the gut. The air rushed out of him, taking all manner of tension and anxiety with it. Gone. It was all gone. Gone was the strain. Gone was the pressure. Gone was the urge to prove himself, to demonstrate unto her that he was not the same strange, stupid foolish boy he'd been when they'd first met in Alabasta. Because now he was more. So much more, so much the better for it, and still so very much in love with the woman standing before him. Immediately, he dismissed these thoughts as folly. They were feelings from his past. A past he'd left behind. But perhaps. No. He mercilessly slammed the lid on that train of thought before it unraveled any further. Renewed desperation coursed through him. Scouring him clean like those great and all-consuming flames that had been a part of him for the last 2 years. Searing fire lanced through his chest and, in that instant, he ached. He plucked at the strands, struggling to knit what remained together, to reassemble his thoughts, so that he might finally break this dreadful silence. My apologies. Naruto gasped out in a rush, suddenly abashed at having rehashed his actions for so long. It has been quite some time since I've seen you last. She smiled, and in that instant his heart ached. It has, hasn't it? You're looking well. It was the first compliment he could think to say, and at once, he regretted it. I could say the same of you. Robin supplied calmly. Burning Will, Uzumaki D. Naruto. Naruto felt his cheeks darken, and not just from shame. Here, standing here before him, was a woman. A woman with such a figure that a goddess would turn green. She was beautiful and she was lovely, in all aspects of the word. Few, if any, could hope to be a match for her in terms of appearance, let alone grace. Even Boa Hancock, the great pirate empress herself, might be hard-pressed to outdo such a bodacious beauty. She'd been beautiful the last time he'd seen her. Now, she was drop-dead gorgeous. There were no hidden truth in her words now, as there had been in Alabasta. Robin remained brutally honest, if a tad polite, although her years with the Strawats might have tempered the strange tempestuous creature she'd once been, years before. He needed to say something. Anything. How have you been? He asked and immediately cursed himself for the words thereafter. Damnable. He'd read the papers. He'd seen the devastating aftermath of the Buster call upon Eni's lobby. There was no knowing what kind of trauma that must have put her through. And then, after all that, to be separated from her nakama for 2, not 1, but 2 years, was too much to ask of anyone. Especially Nico Robin. Well. She acquiesced, the corners of her lips turning up in an expression that was not quite a smile, not quite a frown. I've been well. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Naruto would have been content to have that silence last had it simply stayed that way. To have simply allowed this moment to exist would have been truly, truly wonderful. To work out whatever differences still lay between them. He just wanted it to last for a little while longer. It did not. Frankie had to go and ruin it all by jacking his jaw. Oh, he shouted. What's going on here? How do you know this guy, Robin? The archaeologist of the Straw Hat Pirates shook her head lightly, the motion sending a wave of raven hair cascading down her back. For a moment her eyes lingered. Locking within and caging his heart forever. Then she turned aside, gracing him with a smile for the first time in what felt like to him a truly long time. Whatever trespass he had first committed, whatever mistakes he had made on the road to Sabaody Archipelago, he could see them all, in her eyes. He saw them all. Every flaw, every error, every one of the men and women who'd laid their lives down for his sake so that might arrive here, to this moment, and he knew that their sacrifices had not been for naught. It was worth it. Frankie, meet Burning Will, also known as Uzumaki Naruto. He saw it in her eyes and the soft, not quite shy smile that bespelled her lips. Whatever sleight of hand that had first caused them to part ways, apparently she bore him no ill will over it. Good. The last thing he wanted was to make an enemy. All was forgiven. Burning Will. Frankie gawped in disbelief. Oh, you actually know this super guy. This is that guy, Burning Will in the flesh. Unless you'd like me to charbroil what's left of yours, I suggest you be silent. Naruto snapped back, irate at the pervert cyborg that nearly broken his knuckle only moments before. He wouldn't be making that mistake again. Make her preserve me, if I hear one more word out of your mouth, I swear I'll. You're looking for Luffy, aren't you? Naruto made a squelching sound. He already knew who had asked the question. When he turned to greet it, Robin was looking at him expectantly, arms folded, eyes oddly distant. Almost as if she were staring through him, past him, and a ways beyond him. He wanted to turn, wanted to follow her gaze, but sheer astoundment prevented him from doing such. How? How on earth had she known that he'd been searching the archipelago for Luffy this entire time? He hadn't even told her that. Jet, how did you know I was looking for him? He ventured. Woman's intuition. Was that a hint, just a hint of smug satisfaction in the pools of her eyes? Naruto did not doubt it to be so. Perhaps the old Nico Robin was in there somewhere, after all. She'd certainly held on to that stereotypical confidence of which she'd been so proud. Why not relish the chance to trump him, as she'd just done so now with little to no effort? Women gave him a headache. But that was not the reason for which he had come to Sabaody. So is he here? Naruto asked, suddenly eager. Luffy, I mean. If he is, I really need to. Unfortunately, he isn't. Robin's answer sent his spirits plummeting, but only briefly. Not yet, that is. I'm the eighth to arrive. Luffy should be arriving any day now. May I ask why you're so interested in meeting him, Naruto-kun? Well, there was that eating contest in Alabasta, and that's not the point, he shouted. You're distracting me again, damn it. I'm not here because of that. My reasons are my own and that's the way they'll stay. Robin laughed softly. You haven't changed at all, have you? Oh, yes I have. Naruto answered, eyes darkening with anger. In fact, I can show you how much I've changed right now. Hold it. Now what? Naruto painted indifference onto his face, despite the storm brewing behind his eyes. It was Frankie. The cyborg had remained silent thus far, apparently content to let the two have their moment, but now, he'd decided to intervene. He loomed over Burning Will with shoulders squared, forearms practically bristling in frustration. Naruto leered up at the perverted bot for a moment longer before honoring him with a secondary response. Say, you wouldn't happen to know where Luffy is, would you, Frankie-san? Nope. Frankie answered stiffly. Usopp and Sanji have been here already. Usopp's out to get fuel, and Sanji's stocking us up on fuel. However, he drawled angrily, something's been bothering me for a while now. You keep telling us you're Burning Will, but you keep asking for Luffy. How do we know you're not some sort of government spy or something, huh? Frankie, Robin began, that's enough. So you doubt me, Naruto wasn't having any of it. Squaring his jaw, he took a small step forward. You doubt what you've been told then, Frankie. As if. Frankie growled, I just don't trust you. I knew it. Naruto fired back, then that means you don't trust Robin, either. I'm more than willing to take Nico Robin at her word. Frankie retorted, put on the defensive by the blonde's explosive retort. However. Just because she says you are who I think you are doesn't guarantee you're the real deal. Amaterasu. Naruto summoned the flames back to the surface of his skin, turning his cloak to ash. They devoured the arms of his cloak with tongues of black flame, and then the rest of it, exposing heavily bandaged forearms, the like of which were laced with strange black markings, barely seen beneath the bandages. With the destruction of his cloak, everything about him was revealed, as were the bulky protustions that had been bound to his back. He was a spiky blonde young man with fox-like whiskers, sapphire blue eyes, very handsome in addition. He was very tall, with an athletic outline. He was wearing an orange sleeveless coat, black short-sleeved shirt and pants, red gloves and boots. He was carrying 2 swords behind him. One a katana, the other a wakizashi, both of which, now wreathed in flame with their master. Naruto was eerily aware of the entranced looks the resurgence of his given element had brought. Frankie looked as if he just busted a cog. Likewise, Robin's expression was equally stunned, but even as he looked on, her surprise began melting, molding into something else. Something he daren't give thought to. No, he forced his emotions back down. Now is not the time. No. No, no, no. Willfully, he banished the flames from his body. Satisfied? He asked Frankie, folding his legs and dropping into a squat between the two of them. The last of the flames spurted from his body and dissipated, turning to quiet ash upon the deck. And then they too were gone into the afternoon. Because I won't be doing that again. For a moment there was silence, and in that silence, he gauged at best their reactions. From Robin, he sensed amusement. Frankie, well. Finally, Frankie recovered his voice. That was. Naruto grimaced. So help me if you say what I think you're about to say. Super. Arg. 2 of 3 things happened in that instant. First, Naruto twisted from the crouch into which he'd fallen and flung himself at Frankie. Second, Robin burst out in laughter, and third, a very familiar, very unamused voice rang out on the hill just above the Thousand Sunny. So loud was it that it caused both pirates to immediately cease their squabble and turn toward the source of the sound. You. Naruto detected a blur of orange hair in his peripherals before everything went straight to shit. Something very fast, very large, and very solid crashed into his back and sent him sprawling. His head kissed an iron hardboard and black spot speckled before his vision. By then, he'd already phased out of existence, his body turning to flames as whatever it was came around for a second pass. Imagine his surprise when the reinder careened off of him and careened into the railing of Thousand Sunny, stunning itself for a moment. What the hell is a reindeer doing here? And that moment was all he needed. He simply tracked with emotion, took aim, and fired. Those fleur. Suddenly, the reindeer was gone. A pair of hands wrested him away from the ensuing gust of flame, instead hurtling up the mast and out of harm's way. Naruto hesitated for a moment, fearful of further endangering the Thousand Sunny any more than he already had. Confusion warred with wrath as he rounded on Nico Robin, a round of expletives and questions already forming on his lips. Robin? What the hell are you doing? Boy. Robin. Get down. Naruto half turned, his eyes flying wide and large as he picked himself off the deck. Almost immediately thereafter, a strange-looking projectile skittered across the deck. With a deafening hiss reminiscent of a boiler exploding, a giant Venus flytrap reared up before him seconds later, jaws wide and gawping as they closed around him. Not an instant after the fact, a bold bolt of fire ravaged its roots to the core, eviscerating the carnivorous plant beyond any hope of survival. Bothersome weed. He hissed, curling his nose at the noxious smells the creature gave at its sudden departure from the land of the living. Within seconds, it and its brethren, foul-smelling and all, had been reduced to little more than dried husks upon the deck. He didn't even bother to turn when the great hulking fist of Frankie came hurtling toward his head. Because he'd already caught it, not even bothering to become intangible. You're awfully quick to attack me, Frankie. He mused, his expression turning thoughtful. Why is that? You know damn well why. Naruto shook his head. Actually, I don't know. But, Frankie, you should know. He drew the cyborg close, a sly smile flitting across his features. That I don't pull my punches. He didn't pull this one, either. Flames licked across Naruto's fist, wreathing his wrist in fire. He clenched his fingers and they erupted. Spreading outward in an orange discharge so violently sudden that the infamous shipwright likely saw little more than a red-white blur before the debilitating blow struck. When he finally came to realize that not only had he been ejected from the Thousand Sunny, but now, one of the Ukimaran mangroves was upside down. Seeing as Frankie himself was wedged within one of them. Even as he struggled to free himself from the sappy tree, he was forgotten. Naruto was already moving on to his next target. As he'd suspected, a steadily darkening cloud was indeed forming above him, burgeoned by a series of red and blue spheres sweeping upward into the stinged nimbus. Lightning crackled from within its depths, popping many of the resin bubbles surrounding the Sunny. The coating itself remained all but unbreached, but there was absolutely no guarantee it would remain as such. His fingers flexed for the second time. I can. The compressed fist of fire expanded with alarming speed, erupting upward from the thousand sunny in a veritable ring of flames. So searing, so intense, that they veritably obliterated the gathering clouds above it, clouds that should not have been forming in the first place. He didn't have the time to admire his handiwork. Yet another strange plant was already sprouting behind him, crumpling before the first, so he hadn't the time to see who'd launched the weather-manipulating attack. Naruto was still in the process of extricating himself from its withered jaws when he caught sight of the sniper. Robin was shouting something at him, but he paid it little heed, shoving his forward with such force that a wall of superheated air rushed forth from the motion. It hurtled upward towards its target, the offending sniper blissfully unaware of the massive hurt that was headed his way. Stop. He registered the words as if through a haze and turned, wondering who it was that dared to shout at him so. They were under attack. There was no reason for anyone to be shouting at him, least of all her. And still, he couldn't help but wonder. Stop. Naruto. Stop. Robin's words finally reached him just as he saw who the supposed sniper was. He also saw who was standing beside him, her flaming orange hair too much of a dead giveaway to be mistaken for anyone other than whom she was. And the blast was hurtling toward them both. Too late, he realized his mistake. Too late, when he realized whom he was about to attack, about to incinerate, about to kill, he saw his folly and understood. Shit. He tried to pull back the blast, but it was too late. He could only watch as the invisible column of boiling current hurtled through the atmosphere, a harbinger of doom and destruction for its unwitting target. A target that was never reached. Because a blade sliced through the fire and the flames as though they were butter. Sundering and severing them. Raining down in a series of soft sparkling embers, bringing no harm to Nami or Usopp, leaving the sparks to sputter, then die. Naruto could feel several pairs of eyes boring into his back save for Robin, each sporting a withering glare, but he was already repentant for his deeds. Shame, embarrassment and disbelief washed him to his toes. What was the just now? He hadn't gone off like that since Mariedja. He shuddered with revulsion at the memory. All that blood, so much blood, bloody bodies everywhere, and then had come the rage, the deep all-consuming fury that had swept him up and splattered the world a deep impregnable scarlet. Looks like we made it in time, after all. A smooth voice wafted across the clearing toward them, gently plucking the blonde from his bloody reverie. For that, he was grateful more than any of the Strawats knew. He held no desire to revisit those darkened days of memory and misery. Relieved to have something with which to preoccupy himself, his attention shifted toward the small hillock from which the voice and Nami's disbelieving cry had come. Rayleigh-san. There, standing upon a small hillock were Silver's Rayleigh and Shakiyaku. To Nami, Usopp and Tony Chopper, Silver's Rayleigh and Shaki looked exactly the same as they had 2 years ago. Silver's Rayleigh, a handsome old man who was wearing his glasses, and Shaki, a slim and tall woman with short black hair, 2 tufts pointing upwards, and, as always, she was smoking a cigarette. To Naruto, they looked like a pair of complete strangers. Powerful, complete strangers. Of course, everyone knew the name Dark King Silver's Rayleigh, but this was Naruto's first time seeing the man. Bearing witness to the living legend live and in person. That man had just sundered the powers of the Maramara no Mi, as if they were nothing. That, if nothing else, demanded respect and warranted caution to the highest degree. If he engaged this man, even in his advanced age, Naruto knew that he would not emerge unscathed. He couldn't afford a battle like that. Now, not with an Admiral at his heels and the world government breathing down his neck. Surely they'd gotten wind of his arrival by now. Meaning that his window of opportunity for finding Monkey D. Luffy was about to slam shut in his face. That, and that thought alone, stayed his hand. Silver's Rayleigh. His voice conveyed none of the awe he felt being in the presence of this magnificent man. Didn't expect to see you taking center stage. Turning toward the Strawats, most of whom were either stunned or outright irate, he did the only thing that might possibly remedy the situation. An act of insolence so demanding, so great, that it could shatter the core of his being and shake his very soul. All of you, listen up. He barked loudly. I have something to say and you're going to hear me out. Unceremoniously, he knelt. Uzumaki D. Naruto, the man known as Burning Will, the man who'd raided Mariedja, freed thousands upon thousands of slaves, penetrated the impenetrable undersea gale known as Impel Down, the man whose bounty was superseded only by that of Monkey D. Luffy himself, took a knee. He reached around to the matchless blades that adorned his back and laid them on the deck at his feet, careful to remain facing away from Robin as he did so, genuflecting before the Strawat pirates as a whole. Hear me, Strawats. He began slowly. My name is Uzumaki D. Naruto, son of Minato and Kushina. Some of you might also know me as Burning Will. My bounty is that of $350 million berry for various crimes and offenses, some of which are so terrible that they have been stricken from the history of the world itself. For the past 2 years, I've been training, honing my skills and abilities, and searching. Searching for all of you." He paused, letting his statement hang, unadorned between the lot of them. One by one he read their expressions, his gaze falling first to Nami, then Chopper, Usopp, Frankie, and finally Robin. Shock, dismay, horror, confusion, and amusement. Then his attention shifted, sweeping toward Rayleigh and Shaki, noting that both the former and latter were entirely too pleased by his actions. Though that struck him as odd, the Strawats hadn't attacked him yet. That was good. What he said next would truly test their mettle, as well as his own. He was choking on his own pride as it was, bowing before them and offering his swords in deference. Truly, it went against his better judgment to demean himself in such a manner, but demean he did and continued. "Now that I've finally found you, after all these years, I have something that I must ask of you. But I warn you, consider your situation carefully before you give your answer. Because if you should refuse my offer, then I promise you, I will be a formidable enemy to you all, should you ever cross me." He felt the tension spike at that, and it occurred to him that they might indeed attack him after all. They might perceive his actions as a threat and forego any means of parley on his part if he pressed the matter further. It was a risk he had been born to take. Willing himself to be calm, to speak slowly and coherently, Naruto forged on ahead. "But I digress. I have not come here to quarrel." He bowed his head further, nearly scraping the grass turf of the deck. "Quite the contrary, I believe that the proposition that I am about to offer you will be mutually beneficial to all." Every word boiled in his gut, every syllable brought him one step closer to shattering the facade he'd worked so hard to project outward, if not for his sake, then their own. The next sentence tore a hollow hole inside his gut. "I hereby humbly ask permission to join your crew." The silence was deafening. Shock had wiped their faces clean. Even Rayleigh and Shaki seemed to be at a loss for words. Such was the audacity of Naruto's proposal. Only Nico Robin remained unfazed throughout, though her expression also remained torn somewhere between stoic and chastened. Naruto did not move from his position, intent to await them and their decision, should it be made in his favor. Then. "Nani? I thought this might happen," said Rayleigh. "Now, why don't we all sit down and talk about this?" What's there to talk about, Rayleigh-san?" Usopp cried in disbelief. "You heard what he said. He's killed people. He almost killed us. And now he wants to join our crew. No way. Absolutely not. There's no way in hell that I'm letting this guy anywhere near Luffy." "I heard about you," Tony Chopper said fearfully as he cowered behind Usopp. "You're the one that attacked Impel Down, burned down Mariejoa, and murdered 3 world nobles. Scary. You're a scary guy. There's no way. No way, no how, can you be in our crew." "No way." Frankie seconded. "The new armored me wants nothing to do with this guy. Nothing at all." "Ah." Chopper gawped, his fear momentarily forgotten, as was that of Usopp. "Frankie. Is that you?" "Oh. It sure is." Frankie laughed boisterously. "But we'll save that for later. Right now we need to decide what to do with this bastard." Naruto's sweat dropped, wondering if Frankie had conveniently forgotten the brutal beating he had received only moments before. There would be no deciding of anything, he reminded himself. He'd finally found the Thousand Sunny, and he planned to stay with the Thousand Sunny until he found and presented his offer to Luffy. Until then, he wouldn't be budged. Even if everyone denounced him and spat at him and refused to allow him in the crew. "I think we should give him a chance to prove himself," Robin interjected politely. That one threw him for a loop and half. He'd half expected a vehement refusal on her part if anything else. Her support, though marginal, suddenly meant the world to him. He caught her gaze, suddenly aware that she was smiling, as if she found the disbelief and confusion of her crewmates to be the most natural thing in the world. "Yes," her smile seemed to say, "I accept you." "Yes," it said, "I forgive you." "Yes," it assured him, "I want you to be a part of this crew." He had no idea what he'd done to warrant such kindness, but he knew at once that he didn't deserve it. He was rotten to the core. He hadn't freed those slaves because of any righteous bullshit. It had simply been a bit of temporary insanity. A bout of foul morality. A horrifying fit of decency, that was all, he told himself. And then Usopp had to go and muck it up. Robin." Usopp spluttered loudly, with Chopper nodding emphatically all the while. "Did you not see what he did to us back there? He tried to kill us. He nearly burned down the Thousand Sunny while he was trying to do it, too." "He didn't attack me," Robin said pointedly, as if this solved everything. "Well, I guess he didn't attack you, but..." "To be honest with you guys," Naruto said in an honest tone as he stood woodenly, not taking enough care, "when I began my pirate career, it wasn't my intention in attacking Impel Down and Mariejoa. And I only attacked you because you attacked me first. His tone held no malice, no spite whatsoever, but somehow, those words rooted everyone. "Of course it wasn't," said Shakiyaku. "Jiraiya and Tsunade told us the reason you attacked those places was because you were trying to save a friend of yours. I think her name was. But more than just saving your friend," Rayleigh also said. "You ended up freeing thousands of slaves at Mariedja, as well as raiding their treasury, which means you most likely have several items of substantial value in your possession." "Well, it wasn't like that at first, not when I arrived in Mariedja," Naruto began to articulate. "But when I saw how miserable all those slaves were, how they were suffering and being treated as less than human, I just couldn't leave all of them like that." Then his expression darkened. "And if I just so happened to make off with a few dozen legendary treasures and weapons, then what of it? I doubt the Tenryubito had any real use for them, other than collecting dust. I expected no less of you, Burning Will." Rayleigh laughed. "Good job." "Eh?" Naruto blinked. "I figure you must have arrived here sometime last night," Rayleigh carried on. "Following the incident at the shipyard coating, there have been a large number of attacks on slave traffickers as well as slave owners themselves. All claimed that a mysterious hooded figure attacked them by using fire while freeing the slaves. Obviously, you're the only pirate who can wield fire, so." Wait. Rayleigh, you know this guy?" Usopp asked, confused. "Well, not personally," Rayleigh replied. "But Jiraiya and Tsunade told me what kind of person he is." His gaze slid back to the brooding blonde who, thus far, remained all but inconspicuous despite his infamous reputation. "He's not all bad, I can assure you." Boy, so why are you really here?" Usopp asked. "Like I said, I want to join the Straw Hat Pirates," Naruto answered his question. "Not those imposters running their mouths around town, the real thing. Unfortunately, not one of you seems to know where your captain is and I haven't had any luck in finding him." "Why would you want to join us?" Nami asked him in suspicious tone. "I thought you were hunting down Luffy." Naruto chuckled sheepishly. "Actually, well, I'm doing this to honor a friend of mine," Naruto told her. "I want help Luffy in becoming the new king of the pirates." "Your friend?" repeated Usopp. 4 years ago," Naruto began to explain. "I met him in my hometown. He was hunting for someone named Blackbeard and rumors of his appearance must have brought him to where I lived. He stayed for only a few months, but in that time, we became very good friends. He was so impressed with me that he offered me to join his pirate crew." "Well, why join us instead of this guy's crew?" Tony Chopper asked hesitantly. Naruto's expression turned dour. "He died." A sudden somberness in his eyes rippled across them all. "I'm sorry," replied Tony Chopper in an apologetic manner. "I didn't mean to." "No, it's perfectly alright," Naruto said to Chopper. "Besides, my reason for joining Straw Hat Pirates is to honor his memory." "You said that your friend offered you a place in his pirate crew?" Robin asked him. "He did," Naruto answered. "He was impressed with my fighting abilities when we fought and offered me a seat in his crew, the Whitebeard Pirates." "The Whitebeard Pirates?" Usopp repeated. "Your friend was a member of the Whitebeard Pirates?" "Yes," Naruto confessed. "His name was Fire Fist Ace, the 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates." Robin blinked but said nothing. "You knew Ace?" Nami, Usopp, and Tony Chopper were very much inspired that Naruto had, at some point prior to his pirate career, been friends with Luffy's brother Ace. "So you want to join our crew just for Luffy's brother?" Tony Chopper asked. "Yes, I do," replied Naruto. "But I felt like I should ask your captain first. Do you know where I can find your captain?" "He's not here," replied Nami with a devilish greed and smile on her face. "Knowing Luffy, he'll probably be the last one coming. But if you want to join our crew, is going to cost you something, especially after what you—" "Wait a minute," Naruto protested. "I thought you said you weren't going to charge me." "I said I won't charge you for information," Nami pointed out. "But since you attacked us and singed my hair, I will charge you if you want to join our crew. With interest, of course." "How much?" Naruto asked. $5 million Beely, Nami cheerily named her purse. $5 million Beely. Naruto cried out loud. "Come on, I already paid that much in getting here to this island." "You don't have to worry about that, Naruto dear," said Shaki. "Since you're godchild of Jiraiya and Tsunade, I'll pay for it." "Better get out, Shaki-san," Naruto said with growing appreciation. "I'll pay you back, I promise." Excuse me?" Naruto glanced downward, surprised to find Tony Chopper tugging at his sleeve. May I ask you a question?" "Sure, why not," said Naruto. Chopper half cringed, as if he expected the fearsome pirate to grow horns and a tail and start spewing fire, with the latter being well within the range of his abilities. When Naruto did no such thing, Chopper mustered up his courage to ask the question that, to a doctor like him, needed answering. "I heard Silver's Rayleigh and Shakiyaku say the name of Tsunade," Tony Chopper alleged. "Do you know Tsunade the Slug Doctor?" "Yeah, I do," replied Naruto. She's my godmother. You're a fan of her? Oh, I am, Tony Chopper said happily. She's regarded as one of the greatest medical doctors in the world. I always wanted to meet her. Well, if we run into Granny Tsunade someday I'll introduce you to her, Naruto promised. Thanks, Tony Chopper replied cheerfully. I'm going go out and look for Luffy, said Rayleigh. Naruto, why don't you come along? I'd like to have a little chat with you. You know where Luffy is? Nami asked. I didn't say I know where he is, Rayleigh answered back. But have a good idea where he might be. Alright then, Nami said before turning to Naruto. If you manage to find Luffy, make sure you bring that idiot back to the Thousand Sunny, since he has a bad habit in walking into situations. I will, Naruto replied before turning to Rayleigh. So I take it you really are Sliver Rayleigh, the right-hand man of the King of Pirates. Jiraiya and Tsunade tell me you're a hockey master, said Rayleigh. I take you also learned Hashoku hockey. That I do, Naruto replied. Learning Busashoku hockey took some focus and time. Kenbanshoku hockey was hard and painful to begin with. But Hashoku hockey, man, that was a big surprise. Hashoku hockey is an extraordinary form of hockey that cannot be attained through training, Rayleigh gives out the details. Only 1 in a million people carry it. It's no surprise that you possess that power. You probably inherited from your parents and I. Eh? I said, Rayleigh repeated, that you most likely inherited the Conqueror hockey from your parents and myself. What do you mean? Naruto asked, confused on what Sliver Rayleigh just said. Naruto, Rayleigh began slowly, I know this is going to be shocking to you, but I'm your grandfather. Everyone, excluding Robin and Shaki, screamed. What did you just say? A.N. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Thank you so much for all of you giving me all of these wonderful ideas. I hope you like the chapter. Also, as to the pairings, there is now a poll. Vote on that to determine the results of the eventual pairing as to who will be in the harem. Oh, and I know I may die from asking this so many times, but review please. Then again, being a skeleton I am already dead. Skull Juke. Yo-ho-ho-ho. A.N. Continued, for those of you just who cannot wait, here is a bit of a preview for the next time. There are 2 scenes depicted within this chapter. The first, as Naruto has his second encounter with fake Luffy and the battle with Sentomaru and the pacifistas. The second is also an encounter with Luffy, but you guessed it. The real Luffy. Next time. Pillar of the Inferno. Burning Will and Straw Hat Luffy. Allies. Or enemies. BB Burning Will. Fake Luffy gawped openly. Why you mean this is? Gentlemen, Naruto began slowly, very slowly. I be placed in a bewilderment. His gaze swept across the deck, scouring for any sign of the instigator that had so roused his wrath. Locking upon one Demolo Black. Here I came here, looking for Monkey D. Luffy. He thrust a hand imperiously towards the cabin, towards the fake Luffy. And upon a sudden, I find this, a crew of imposters. Sailors abandoning their posts, without orders, without leave. Men before the mast, and taking the ship for themselves. What be that, I wonder? He mused aloud, refusing to smile at his crudely crafted metaphor. He let the silence hang until everyone choked on it. Mutiny. Someone shouted suddenly. Naruto didn't skip a beat. He didn't care that he couldn't see them. He knew the voice by sound alone. It was Tamari. She was here somewhere, hiding amongst them, tucked safely out of sight, he knew that much. For a moment, he almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. What a persistent. Again. Naruto held a hand to his ear, feigning deafness. Mutiny. Came the reply, though slightly exasperated. Aye. Naruto nodded, his form bending, shimmering beneath wave upon wave of oppressive heat. Mutiny. And what fate befalls mutineers? Now we know the answer to that, do we not? Mutineers hang. Flames boiled outward from his fist. Now all of you die. Heiken. Naruto roared, his knuckles bursting before the command. Summoning a spiraling pillar of flame, subsequently engulfing everything within a 3-mile radius. The fleet never stood a chance. A massive fist of heat and fire barreled forward, its jaws wide and gaping as it lurched toward its prey. Within 2 beats, the entire Navy fleet was all but decimated and everyone was left to wonder at the aftermath of the attack. Ace. Luffy gawped. That was Ace's attack just now. Boy. Naruto barked. Bakayaru. Do I look like Portuguese de Ace to you? Eh? Nanda. Luffy blinked, suddenly very much aware of the blonde standing at the helm of his ship. Who are you? He squinted at the blonde whose body roiled and broiled like so much flame, and he found his words taken away as he recognized the color of those flames. Because this was the very same power that his brother had wielded prior to death. It couldn't be. No way. Naruto grinned wickedly. Haha. I've finally found you, Luffy. Now, let me join your crew. Luffy blinked, then grinned. Sure. Everyone excluding Robin faulted. Damn it, Luffy. Pillar of the Inferno. Burning Will and Straw Hat Luffy. Allies. or enemies. For an instant, Jewelry Bonnie was almost certain of it. She could have sworn that she heard it. His voice. It was the voice that whipped itself into a fury from outside her cell all those years ago. The voice that had awakened something within her, the voice that had an irresistible aching longing lodged within her breast, an almost physical need night and day for the sweet warmth of his presence once more. Even her own gluttony paled in comparison to this great and terrible need that swelled within her breast. Jewelry Bonnie tore off another copious streak of meat from the steak she'd been chewing on and gulped it down in one bite. When she reached for another, her fingers closed around a small length of chain instead. She frowned, regarding the object with ill intent a moment longer before her features abruptly softened. Fingering the clasp between her thumb and index finger, her perpetual hunger momentarily forgotten, she flicked the locket open, exposing the contents within. "Bastard," she hissed, fighting the onslaught of tears even as her eyes glistened anew. "You stupid good-for-nothing bastard." Enclosed within the large locket were two items. The first, a deceptively simple piece of paper, its bland and otherwise harmless appearance belying its usefulness to her over the years. The second was of a much greater value, so great in fact that it could be called priceless. In the last 2 years, she'd often fiddled with the locket, gazing upon the face contained within, the face that had given her comfort on lonely nights. Just as it had ever since he'd freed her and her crew. Bitter though she was over their parting, the months that they'd shared were still a source of fondness for her. She hadn't been able to waylay him any longer than that, though she hadn't failed for lack of effort. Her crew had wanted to continue their journey, to set off for the new world with his power at their side. But they hadn't. With his strength, they would have been unstoppable. And there was time when Bonnie thought he might take her up on the offer. To serve as her first mate, to bend knee to none, but her will he certainly had no qualms to that between the sheets as her second in command. Then came the Mariejo incident. Naruto, who she'd been so certain had been on the verge of joining her crew, abruptly demanded that she take him to Mariejo on that fateful stormy night. She remembered the tortured look in his eyes when the name Am was mentioned, and the way that pain had morphed his already handsome face into something glorious. Godlike in its intensity. "Take me to Mariejo." She'd been a fool not to refuse him and a fool not to ask why. Instead, like a blasted wench, not a captain, she'd granted him his request, and they made full steam for the Red Line, with all due haste. He didn't say a word to her for the entirety of the voyage. Whenever she'd felt the urge to press him for answers or anything for that matter, the same tortured expression reared before her visage. The same memory of that horror amongst horrors dawning upon him, and her resolve withered away. Upon their arrival to that mountainous wall of red stone, he'd done the unthinkable. She remembered everything that had been wrong about him that day. His touch, his taste, his lips, hungering over her, trailing delicately across her jaw. He'd pushed past her flailing hands and kissed her neck and then lower on her neck, and then he was pulling down the bra she'd gone to all the trouble of wearing that night, and then her hands weren't flailing anymore and his lips were gone. "It was fun while it lasted, Bonnie." She remembered his words, spoken with crystal clear clarity. "But this is goodbye." And just like that, he was gone. Back then, she'd only an instant to watch the flaming wings unfurl from his back, and then, with a great and mighty gust of pyrokinesis, he roared upward into the night. Reduced to little more the likes of a distant orange speck, and then that too, was lost in the clouds. He'd never returned, and since that day, she'd suffered as only a lovelorn woman could suffer. His face was the scourge of her dreams. Because it was also a nightmare. A constant reminder of how close she'd come to losing everything, only to have it all thrown back in her face by another face, his face, one, exuding such warmth that it made her ache and. "When I'd heard that you'd escaped from the world government, it made my blood freeze." Bonnie shook her head, clearing it of him and of her terrible captivity at the hands of Akainu. She'd been bested so easily back then. Just the thought of it made her blood boil to a feverish pitch. She was no longer the weakling she'd been back then. She was no longer a rookie, either. The last 2 years had tempered Benay's resolve, forging it into an unstoppable blade of steel, one that she would take great pleasure in thrusting through the throat of the Navy Admiral. But for now, vengeance would have to wait. Because now, at long last, she'd tracked him back to Sabaody. The Vivre card was pointing that way. Due west from here. Where here was, however, remained to be seen. She'd left her crew back at the docks, in the distant hope of keeping her identity a secret. Of course, a hooded woman with pink hair, a killer body, and a massive stake in hand wasn't exactly inconspicuous either. She could already feel the stares of passerby boring into her. Whether from recognition or, perhaps, confusion. It didn't take her all that long to realize why. As she quietly slipped past a gaggle of Marines kami, but there were a lot of them here, something caught her eye. It was little more than a simple poster, tacked up against a poster of similar size and length, but ultimately, that wasn't what caught her attention. She drew nearer to the bar and marveled at them, a series of scorch marks blackened across the doorstep of the bar, and, above that, relentless. She broke out a sweat and closed her eyes, trying to focus on the mad rhythm of her own heart. She bit down hard on the steak in her hand and forced herself to be calm, lest she be overcome by the sight before her. To her chagrin, she still broke down laughing. Once her bounty had been a sizable $140 million. Now, much to her delight, it had been ratcheted up to an enormous $279 million. Even as she scrubbed at her eyes with the back of her free hand, the number did not change. Her bounty had all but doubled in the last 2 years. Doubled. Granted, she'd been out at sea for the majority of it as she'd been searching for him, but still. Can I help you, miss? Bonnie blinked, drawn from her reverie by the sound of a voice. She turned, regarding the one who had spoken, with much ill intent. The man, for he was clearly male, was a homely-looking sort and he quailed beneath the baleful glare leveled upon him. Good. He was right to fear her even more so if he knew to whom he was speaking. She let him cower a moment longer before thrusting a wanted poster into his face. You seen this guy? She demanded, parading the likeliness of burning will before his visage. He spluttered nervously for a moment before finally seeming to recognize that which peered out at him from within the poster. Dismay, disbelief and desperation each flitted across his face. For a moment she was torn. Wondering whether she should have given up this pointless quest long ago and fervently hoping that she'd finally found a lead. The bartender blinked owlishly. Yeah, I've seen him. He paused, his eyes flitting first toward her breasts, pervert blushing, then back to her face. He paid me for the damages he caused. Abruptly his eyes narrowed beadily and became suspicious. Why? He asked suddenly. You a friend of his? Bonnie felt her cheeks darken at the mention of that. No. Not friends. They'd been anything but friends. Friends didn't set your heart pounding. Friends didn't set you aflame with a single, smoldering smile. Friends didn't visit your cabin late at night and torment you with the vast intricacies of pleasure that the human body could offer. No, definitely not a friend. Have you seen him or not? Bonnie all but snarled, her free hand clenching into a claw around the massive steak upon which she'd been chewing. Rending the bone asunder as easily as one might break a stick over their knee. Her eyes gleamed frightfully from within the hood and for a moment, against a sudden and inexplicable gust of wind, her visage became visible. Wailing at the sight of her and her strength, the bartender let out a frightful squeal. Yes. He cried. Yes, I've seen him. He was just here. He wrecked my bar, then paid me for the damages and everything. Please don't hurt me. Blubbering softly, he laid his head prostrate upon the ground and scraped the soil with his elbows. A furtive gesture of humility. Please. He begged. You can have the money he gave you, just please do not kill me. I have a wife and 3 kids. Paid you? That piqued Bonnie's interest. There was only one pirate who would do such a thing. Only one pirate was as well known for his vicious cruelty as he was his great sense of piousness and charity. Combined with the fact that the entirety of the bar looked as if it had been burnt from the inside out and… Impossible. She held out her hand, palm up, she let the Viva card do its work. Imagine her surprise when it all but leapt from her hand. Barely had it done so then her fingers closed tight around it and formed a fist, preventing it from escaping. Warily now, she uncurled her fingers. The Viva card now hedged toward the north, almost as if it were being pulled by a strong magnetic pull. It meant he was on the move. At no good baka, just where the hell is he? Many groves to the north. For a moment, Naruto had the strangest sensation. It felt as though he were being watched, as though somehow, somewhere, someone was searching for him. How he knew, he could not describe. Then shock overwhelmed him and the moment was lost. Wait just a damn moment. Naruto cried out in shock. You're my grandfather. They disembarked from the ship. Choosing instead to move to Shaki's rip-off bar. Naruto had been demanding answers on the way, but Rayleigh had remained imperviously silent. That is, until they'd arrived. Now, sitting at the bar, the occasional flame escaping his lips, Uzumaki Naruto wanted answers. And he wanted them now. His once calm demeanor was all but shattered. His mind still reeling from the revelation. Thusly putting his search for Luffy on a temporary hold. Sharing in his surprise, Nami, Usopp, Tony Chopper, Frankie and Shaki still gawped. All eyes fell upon the Dark King, each demanding their own answer. Each loosing in a simultaneous quack of surprise that came in the form of a loud. What did you just say? That's right, Silver's Rayleigh confessed, ignoring their disbelief. As I said before, Naruto, I am your grandfather. He's your grandson. Shakiyaku slowly said, her eyes only slightly larger than usual. Then that means. Yes, Minato is my son, Silver's Rayleigh also admitted to Shakiyaku. I had a relationship with a woman living in Logtown before I set sail with Roger to conquer the entire Grand Line. After Roger's execution I found out that I had a son named Minato. He paused at the last, as if to say, sorry I didn't tell you about that, honey, because this was not, absolutely not the kind of thing you concealed from the woman you were going to spend the rest of your life with. For the most part, Shaki concealed her shock rather well. The only sign of her anger was the slightest narrowing of her eyes and perhaps a tad of hesitation with which she exhaled the smoke of her cigarette. It was enough. One look and Silver's Rayleigh knew he had some explaining to do. And fast. Thankfully, Naruto recovered his voice before Shaki's unholy wrath could descend en masse upon her unfortunate husband. Wait. Naruto held up his hands as if he might somehow ward away the confusion. Did Bachan and Hirosenin know about this? Because if they did, then why wasn't I told about this when they told me about my parents? Flames fizzled forth from clenched fists, a silent warning that his next answer would either be the right one, this it would be, or it would be his last. They did know, answered Rayleigh, albeit a bit hesitantly. But they both felt I should be the one to tell you if you ever made it here to Sabaody. Naruto must have accepted that answer because his burning knuckles sputtered and died abruptly. But the words had not left him unscathed. There was a strange, deadened look in his eyes now, one that bespoke of joy, confusion, loss, and finally, furious relief. Robin saw this and touched her hand upon Naruto's shoulder. Just a touch. A simple brushing of the fingers. A brief caress traversing the valley between his shoulder and neck, then it was gone. This did not go unnoticed by the remaining Strawats. Almost instantly, the anger leached from Naruto's face. His shoulders seemed to sag for a moment, as if to say he was angry, not stupid. Naruto remained hunched over the keep and swirled the contents of his glass, watching the alcohol ebb and flow with the cup before smashing it to his lips and bringing it crashing down on the countertop. If not for the restraining hand on his shoulder, he looked as if he might lash out at that very moment. But he did not, and as such, the silence was all but deafening. Rayleigh, I can't believe you had this secret all along without me knowing it. Finally, it was Shaki who shattered the impasse. Sorry about that, but the fewer people the better, explained Rayleigh. Naruto's parents and I were extremely notorious pirates that had been hunted ruthlessly by the world government and the Marines. Abruptly, his expression soured, his gaze falling instead upon the whiskey in his glass. Just like Portuga's Ace was. You fear they will do the same way to Naruto as they did to Fire Fist Ace? Robin asked, doing her best to conceal the small flicker of dread that flitted across her face. Robin, many things though she was, had also been shaken by the death of Ace. But unlike the rest of the Strawats, she held a more personal stake in the well-being of his successor, and the thought was an ache that awoke inside her that she'd as never known before, and for a moment, the intensity of it startled even her. He was already hunted relentlessly as it was. Yes, said Rayleigh. I never knew Roger had a child with Portgas de Rouge, so it was a bit of a surprise that he never told me or the rest of his crew. His gaze slid to Naruto, as though his grandson might somehow compound his story with further facts. Which, of course, he did. Naruto was simply too proud to be passed over. Given the opportunity and the motive, he shone like the sun. And thus, he shined. Well, back then, I didn't know Ace was really the son of the Pirate King, Naruto resumed. But from what Granny Tsunade and Pervy Jiraiya told me, the world government had been killing a large number of pregnant women in order to ensure the bloodline of the Pirate King was terminated. His fingers drummed across the countertop as he said this, not from anger, but from an incessant desire to occupy the power thrumming within his fist. That they did, said Rayleigh. Minato and I were somehow able to keep our father-son relationship a secret to the world, save for Tsunade and Jiraiya. Yet despite the fact that we kept it a secret, Minato decided to follow my footsteps and become a pirate anyway. Minato? Would he happen to be Yellow Flash Minato Namikaze? Robin asked. But he is, Naruto's chest practically swelled with pride. Bachan and Hirosenin told me he was one of the most fearsome pirates to ever exist in the Grand Line. He was the eater of the teleportation fruit, a devil fruit that allowed him to travel vast distances in an instant. Just by picturing the place in his mind. His explanation was greeted by somber expressions, as all of the Strawats were eerily reminded of how they'd been sent flying by a man with similar powers, Bartholomew Kuma. And Minato's powers exceeded even those. Robin, however, chuckled softly at the mention of Naruto's father. I think I'm beginning to see a bit of a resemblance here. He was nicknamed the Yellow Flash due to his powers and yellow hair, Rayleigh added. Unmatched in speed, cunning, and skill. Whether they be pirate or marine, anyone would rather retreat and face the gallows, rather than face him. For a moment, the faintest wisp of nostalgia flitted across his features. Because of his reputation he was the one of the most infamous pirate ever alive, even invited to join the Shichibukai, though he declined the offer. If he hadn't, I might not be here. Naruto murmured, more for Robin's sake than his own. Then his gaze slid to Rayleigh. Oh, and by the way, thank you. Rayleigh laughed. I should be thanking you? You're taking this rather well, all things considered. And suddenly, Naruto felt relief. It welled up in him with such force that it almost staggered him, like it had been waiting there for so long biding its time, a relief he had nursed and hidden away but never acknowledged. It wasn't simply that he wasn't angry. He was furious, actually. All this time, he'd had a grandfather and no one had bothered to tell him of it. But that fury found itself washed away in the aftermath of a joy so powerful that it threatened to utterly obliterate his senses entirely. It felt nice, knowing that he had a grandfather. Whatever you say, old man. It felt good to say it. It felt freeing. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest, but he knew that he was in the right. He was willing to die being right. Not that he had any intention of dying anytime soon, mind you. Rayleigh peered at him over his spectacles, a broad smile lighting his every feature. He'd half expected his grandson to fly into a fit of rage, considering the secret that had been kept from him. When he extended a hand, Naruto was quick to clasp it. Even Moreso to be swung to his feet. Gone was the hesitation. Gone was the indecision. Gone was any semblance the likes of discomfort he had known thus. In its place was his usual overwhelming self-confidence, renewed by the fact that he. Turning to the rest of the Straw Hat Pirates, Rayleigh said, "The Flying Fish Riders are already on their way here with Brook. Sanji is looking for Zolo and has himself a snail you can contact. Naruto and I will be heading to Grove 46 number, since it's likely Luffy might be there." "Hold on one moment," Nami interrupted him before turning to Naruto. "If you really are going to join our crew, then how do we know you won't turn on us?" Naruto blinked as slowly as a tortoise, caught off guard by her heinous remark. Robin began to protest. "Look, Robin," Nami cut her off. "This guy said in the bar that he has a score to settle with Luffy." Distinctly, she left out the murderous intent he'd leaked as he said those very words. Because they still chilled her to the bone. She didn't want to believe that Luffy could be killed, but if it was someone like this guy, someone who wielded the powers of the Maramara no Mi at a whole different plateau. "Now wait a second," Naruto frowned. "You think I'm going to kill Luffy? Is that why you all attacked me?" "Based on your tone, said Nami. "You seem to want Luffy for some grudge in the past." "Why else would we attack you?" added Usopp. "I'm ready to fight you to the death before I let you harm Luffy." Chopper seconded. "You'll have to go through all of us first." Everyone sweat dropped as they realized that, despite his vehement protest, he was still hiding behind the hulking cyborg. It was almost laughable, really. No, it was laughable. Hence the reason Naruto surprised everyone, then. He laughed. "You're all idiots." "It's not what you think," said Robin. "I'm not surprised you've forgotten about him, Usopp." "Huh?" Usopp replied with gasp as Naruto departed. "What you mean? I've never met this guy before." "Are you telling me you've forgotten about Alabasta?" Robin asked Usopp with a smile. Usopp blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. "Huh?" Naruto was still laughing. "I get it now. Really, I do." He managed to squeeze out the words between copious bouts of innate laughter. "You guys thought I was going to kill him. Ha." He slapped his knee in genuine amusement. "That's a good one." He watched as realization dawned in their eyes save for Frankie, who seemed all the more confused and burst out, laughing so hard that he nearly cried, such was his amusement. "Oh." Frankie bellowed angrily. "Somebody wanna tell me what's going on here, huh?" Robin whispered in his ear. "Eh?" Frankie performed a double take, then a sudden about face. "Really? So that's what this is all about?" Robin nodded mysteriously. "Really?" Naruto nodded, scrubbing at his amused moist eyes with the back of his hand. "That bastard beat me in an eating contest. I'll tell you all about it." "Wait." Naruto turned, regarding the one who had spoken with a ruby-red iris. "Yes. Before you go anywhere, I have a question that needs answering." Nami stalked toward him, still shouldering her claim attacked. "That treasure you mentioned, just exactly how much was it worth, anyhow, huh?" "About 100,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000, asphalted, save Nico Robin, though even her eyes did widen slightly at the amount mentioned. Really? Nami pressed in, her eyes all but glittering with dollar signs. Say, what exactly did you do with all that treasure? Why, I gave it all away, of course. Naruto said this as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Is there a problem? Oh, no, that's great what? Nami shrieked. What do you mean you gave it all away? All of it? You just tossed it out the window. Now, during a tantrum such of these even the men of the Strawats feared their navigator. Whenever money was mentioned, she became all but obsessed about it. And when she lost money, well, let us just say that the circumstances often turned out to be less than pleasant. Hence the reason that Frankie, Usopp and Chopper now cowered in a corner as said navigator through had what might have been her worst episode yet. Naruto didn't so much as flinch. There was no such tossing involved. He snapped right back, his forehead smashing against hers in retaliation towards the sudden intrusion of his personal space. I gave all of it to charities and such. What's wrong with that? I can't believe you. Nami shouted. What kind of idiot throws away that much cash and doesn't keep any of it for themself? Oh, I know. You. Says the woman who'd give an arm and a leg for a few hundred berries. Naruto retorted flippantly. Says the idiot who gave all of his away. Nami's hiss was all but demonic. Lies. Wait, what? Nami blinked, caught unawares by the sudden accusation. Are you calling me a liar now, too? Indeed I am. Naruto barked, his forehead still mashed against hers, the two of them still engaged in their strange tug-of-war shouting match. Honestly, how can someone so beautiful be so soullessly greedy and dense at the same time? It's maddening, I tell you. Maddening. It was then that Nami realized just how incredibly close she had gotten to him in her ire. Again with the compliments. Nami felt her cheeks darken as she backed away, unsure of how to respond to his sudden vehemence. I can't tell if he's being serious or wait, why am I blushing? Am I? I am. Gods. What do you mean, exactly? Nami cursed herself for the stammer, but it was too late to take the words back. What makes you think I'm lying, huh? Why was it so incredibly hot all of a sudden? Her skin felt hypersensitive as Naruto retreated, his fingers briefly brushing across her shoulder, prickling across her back with goosebumps. Her thoughts went maddeningly awry, and it took every last ounce of her resolve to stay focused on the task at hand. Because Naruto was speaking again. Well, I didn't give everything away. Naruto amended crossly. Several artifacts were too dangerous, so I held onto them for safekeeping. He reached over his shoulder, rummaging around in his pack for a moment and, coming up with something, exhaled softly. Such as this. All the Straw Hat save for Robin tensed, half expecting him to come out with a weapon of sorts. He did. Naruto had been poking around in his pack whilst he spoke, and now, Nami saw the reason why, as he revealed a large bundle. Unfurling it, exposing the contents within, he showed it to everyone, and Nami marveled as he showed them what looked like a long oblong box, one that he now opened. Nami gasped as she looked in the box to see an ebony black blade lying upon red silk. The blade's sword seemed to have been carved from a single piece of glossy stone, looking almost as if it was made from glass. Was it obsidian? She'd heard of such materials but never actually seen them before. The hilt was beautiful, delicate ridges leading up to a pommel carved into a roaring dragon's head. As Naruto lifted it out gingerly, Nami saw what looked like red veins within the blade, tiny cracks along its surface as it came free from the sheath. She would have thought it was blood, but running her finger along the side told her it was perfectly smooth. Not a stain or blemish. When the smooth metal touched her skin she felt a tingle. Not unpleasant and almost warm. It made her like the weapon all the more. Now this was worth stealing. This was something special, something that Naruto had deemed too valuable or, perhaps too dangerous, prized enough to keep it on his person in the case that someone should seek it. Not that they would, of course, but how much could he expect anyone to be fool enough to steal from him, a man of fire? Wondering the likes of his subsequent explanation, however, Nami suddenly found her desire for the blade greatly lessened. This is Kakushibum. Naruto explained solemnly. Its name translates to Black Death in your language. Believe me when I say that you don't want this blade to cut you. You might survive, you might not. Regardless, this blade's reputation is a fearsome one, and as such I couldn't trust it to be held by any hand other than my own. With an infinite delicateness, he slid the blackened blade back into its sheath and returned it into his pack. Remarkably, he made absolutely no mention of the thin wakizashi at his waist, nor the other various baubles and trinkets within his backpack, the likes of which included an odd-looking belt, bracelet, an equally mysterious cloak, and other paraphernalia that one could only begin to hazard a guess at. If anyone had anything to say about these, however, they were keeping their silence. Naruto seemed to appreciate that. He shouldered his pack, squared his shoulders, and rolled his eyes in exasperation. I'll give all of you the whole story when I get back, he promised. Now, if you don't have any more questions, I believe I have an appointment with your captain. Before any of them, Nami, Robin, Rayleigh, or otherwise, could hope to stop him, he simply stalked forward, pushed through the double doors and was gone. A brief swish of superheated air signaled his departure, and then he was amongst the branches. Shaki sighed. He really is your grandson after all, Ray-san. Meanwhile, in Grove 46. Take him out, big boss. Looks like we've found one of the culprits already. Fake Luffy cackled as the hooded youth in the parka flanked by fake Zolo and fake Sanji approached him. Let's start by teaching this man a lesson. And just so you all know, what you're about to see happen to this man is the same thing that's going to happen to you if you ever have the nerve to defy me. So take that as a warning. Zoro, Sanji, do you know this guy? The fake mustachioed youth asked, recognizing the brash lout as the one who'd impeded him prior to his arrival. Thing is, I ran into him earlier. But before the charade could unravel further, a loud crack echoed throughout the air. That's as far as you go, pirate scum. A voice exploded across Grove 46. Straw at Luffy and all you minions. I suggest you come quietly. We have sealed all exits from Grove number 46 and there is nowhere left for any of you to run. Suddenly the grove was filled with a rasp of drawn blades, clacking of cannons, and shuffling of many feet. Each and every gaze turned toward the sound, only to find that the officer had indeed spoken the truth. They were completely surrounded. The Marines. Fake Luffy gasped, eyes bulging. The hooded mustachioed man sweat dropped. How did the Marines know I was here? See Captain. Fake Sanji wailed. They've got us completely surrounded. Don't let him throw you, idiot. Why do you think we gathered all these new crew members for? We've got 100 million bounty heads on our side, for Chrissakes. With this in mind, he whirled, his gullet swaying ridiculously to and fro as he leveled his gaze upon the most prominent member of his recruits and quite possibly the most maiden of the bunch. Hey Caribou. Fake Luffy shouted. Use that marine we captured as a shield. Force him to open a way out. Sorry big boss. Caribou cackled mirthlessly. I'm afraid I can't do that. See, this snot-nosed brat lied to us. Told us he hadn't called his pals. Grinning from ear to ear, with malice and murder in his eyes, the supernova leveled his pistol upon the wounded marine, sprawled before his feet. Much to everyone's horror, his finger curled around trigger and barrel, his eyes widening marginally with uncontained glee. Clack. Right. Caribou, you idiot. Fake Luffy bellowed. Stop. Too late. But the sickening squelch, the marine toppled over, dead, a bullet in his head. The result was instantaneous. Shoot the pirates down. Before either force could collide, a blazing current of flame enveloped the clearing. Evolving from orange to yellow then red, it boiled through across the void. Separating them from each other and one another. It was a veritable pillar of the inferno, spitting and snarling and snapping at all those nearby, for it would suffer no trespass. Any who dared to brook such an offense were subsequently reduced to ashes. Snapping and crackling, those ashes smoldered away in the wake of his arrival. Well now, what do we have here? Slowly, they resumed human form. Slowly, ever so slowly, they assumed the shape of sapphire eyes, roughened blonde bangs, and a whiskered visage. One as easily recognized as it was unlike any other. Before, he had been relatively unknown. Now, with no cowl with which to hide behind, he appeared in a great glorious gust of smoke and flame, perching upon the nearby bough of one of the many mangrove of Sabaody archipelago. He smiled softly, his great gaze scouring the clearing clean. Bringing a halt to the fighting before it could even hope to begin. The silence was deafening. Draped like a shroud, it hung over the grove, thick and palpable. No one moved. No one breathed. All eyes fixated upon him, this burning man who wielded 4 blades, this Oni of fire and ash, this smoldering specter that loomed over them like God himself. Ready to dole out divine judgment upon the wicked. BB burning will. Fake Luffy gawped openly, sweating now, like the pig he was. Why you mean he actually came here? Naruto cleared his throat, and every pirate, every marine, flinched. Gentlemen, Naruto began slowly, very slowly. I be placed in a bewilderment. His gaze swept across the deck, scouring for any sign of the instigator that had so roused his wrath. Locking upon one Demolo Black. Here I came here, looking for Monkey D. Luffy. He thrust a hand imperiously towards the cabin, towards the fake Luffy. And upon a sudden, I find this, a crew of impostors. Sailors abandoning their posts, without orders, without leave. Men before the mast, and taking the ship for themselves. What be that, I wonder? He mused aloud, refusing to smile at his crudely crafted metaphor. He let the silence hang, until everyone choked on it. Mutiny. Someone shouted suddenly. Naruto didn't skip a beat. He didn't care that he couldn't see them. He knew the voice by sound alone. It was Tamari. She was here somewhere, hiding amongst them, tucked safely out of sight, he knew that much. For a moment, he almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. Such a persistent wench. Oh, well. Best to make full effect of the chaos she had sown amongst their ranks. Again. Naruto held a hand to his ear, feigning deafness. Mutiny. Came the reply, sounding only slightly exasperated. Aye. Naruto nodded, his form bending, shimmering, beneath wave upon wave of oppressive heat. Mutiny. And what fate befalls mutineers? He paused, his gaze sweeping through their ranks of pirates and marines like a great cleansing flame. Now we all know the answer to that, do we not? Flames boiled outward from his fists, eddying forth from his knuckles, swelling with every second. Mutineers. Pang. Flame spewed forth from his fists, circumventing the clearing in a ring of fire. Now, both the pirates and marines were trapped with one another. A lucky few had thought too much of the great Burning Will reputation and looked as though they might choose to fling themselves at their would-be captors rather than face this man of flame and fire and fury. And so, the battle would be joined. Naturally, the Marines would want to eliminate the pirates rather than capture them. And of course, the pirates wouldn't want to go down without a fight, either. Neither could come to a compromise, as their values were simply too different, the black to the Marines' white. Eventually, they would clash. Here, with no hope of escape, save through the flames, their choice was to fight or to die. At least, that had been the intention. You. A blood-curdling shriek shattered the silence, demanding everyone's attention. Naruto rounded on the sound, flames sputtering, eyes narrowing, becoming furious specks of crimson as he beheld he who dared to interrupt him. Surprisingly, he recognized him. Naruto knew who this pirate is. He was Wet-Haired Caribou, a supernova pirate worth $210 million berry. Based on the rumors he heard about him, this guy has a violent reputation for killing countless Marines. A true psychopath. He also recognized the large rotund egg-shaped man at his side, his brother Blood Splatter Koribu. Wicked and violent, they were both born killers. And now one of those killers had singled him out and turned their wrath upon him. Lovely. Ooh. Caribou shrieked. You're finally here. Naruto gawped, aghast as the man stalked forward, the mass of pirates and Marines parting before him like the Red Sea. What in the? I've been waiting a long time for this. Caribou snarled at Naruto. A long fucking time for this to kill you. Every time I killed a Marine or anyone that crosses me I think of you, you bastard. Now you're going to die slowly and painfully for what you did to me. He pranced around, stamped his feet and flailed his long sleeves at an equally incredulous Burning Will, the latter beginning to wonder if the former had finally lost his mind. Say what? Naruto asked, confused by what this pirate had just said, to which his flames slowly dimmed. He'd never seen this man before. He knew him by reputation only, a reputation that nearly rivaled his own in terms of blood. That was where the similarities ended. Whereas Naruto spilled blood for the sake of the righteous, Caribou simply killed anyone and everyone for the thrill of it, because he was just that. A man who reveled in bloodshed. Don't act like you don't know me, Burning Will. Caribou snapped. And don't act as if you don't remember what you've done to me. I'm sorry, Naruto repeated in a more confusingly irate manner. I've never seen you before in my life. Now, if you know what's good for you, you leave me alone, Caribou. What? I said, beat it, small fry. Naruto all but snapped. I'm not in the best of moods right now. Attack me and you'll receive no mercy. You mean you really don't remember me? Caribou hissed. You've forgotten what you did to me? Look, for the last time, I've never seen you before. Naruto's confusion had only succeeded in pissing off Caribou even further. Bastard. He screamed in a rage as he flung himself at Naruto with bloodlust in his eyes. Heedless of the danger, heedless of his own peril, heedless of anything but the terrible red haze that clouded about his vision. He'd kill him. He'd make him pay. Him. All of them. All of those who'd ever make him look like such a fool, all those who'd betrayed him, all of. He never made it. The blast of black fire struck Caribou in the chest. He screamed, a peal of terror that turned into torment as he fell back onto the floor. Everyone turned and realized that none other than Burning Will had done the deed, his gloved hand still held out before him and wreathed in black flames. Caribou clutched a pool of shadow that spread across his torso, his eyes growing wide and large as the rippling flame began to spread. What the hell? Naruto shook his head, smoothing his roughened bangs with one hand. I warned you, didn't I? He sighed. Now, you'll pay the price. He gestured with his flame-sheathed hand, and the flames encroaching Caribou responded voraciously. It grew and appeared to be eating him. No. Caribou wailed, realization dawning in his eyes, the understanding of his fate, finally at hand. No. Pirates, Marines, and bystanders alike watched in dull horror as his screams turned into shrieks. He spasmed wildly, dropping his pistol and struggling as the flames enveloped him with a terrible, terrifying slowness. It washed over his arms and his legs and then finally swallowed his head. His screaming ended abruptly. The shadow-covered body, for it this massing of flames could no longer be called a person, flailed about twice more and then the blackness simply collapsed, leaving nothing more than a sea pool of liquid on the floor. The greenish liquid slowly slithered across the grass, hissing and sizzling wherever the sunlight touched it. Naruto watched the strange, swampy ooze for a moment longer before he blinked, subsequently extinguishing the slow-burning flames. Then he turned his gaze upon the rest, Marine and pirate alike, and he scowled. He wasn't quite sure if Caribou was a Loja. Most men turned to ash beneath the flames of the Amaterasu, but whatever he was, the reputation he'd earned over the years did him little good as a pile of seeping muck. He'd deal with him later. Now, Naruto began slowly, calling out to those below him. Have any of you seen Straw Hat Luffy? All fingers pointed toward the fat buffoon standing upon the deck. Naruto's left eye twitched. That isn't him, you dolts. That's a fake. Eh? Fake Luffy and all of the imposters quilled as thousands upon thousands of angry eyes turned upon them. The word of burning will was not to be questioned, apparently. Now they realized this too late, much too late. Naruto permitted himself a brief moment of satisfaction as they prepared to meet the fate they so deserved. Then he cast it aside as he would so much refuse. Because the angry clamor had become all but deafening. Like I said, where's the real? A faint prickling in the back of his neck was the only warning Naruto received. Bean. Then the branch, the bough upon which he'd been so firmly perched, exploded. He had only an instant to react, only a split second to see the particle beam of light as it rushed forth from an unknown location, then he was gone. Bits of bark peppered across his coat as he fell, plummeting toward the earth, feet first. Naruto was unconcerned. His mind was already awhirl, leaving his body to absorb whatever impact might befall him. There was only one man capable of such an attack. Shit, he swore as the ground rushed up to greet him. They sent Kizaru here already? He barely even registered the fray as he landed, scanning the crowd for any sign of the Admiral. Instead the forms of not one, not two, but three hulking Bartholomew Kumas reared up before him, each completely identical, each moving toward him, and each ravaging the horde of pirates, as though they were not but children in their effort to try and apprehend him. Uh-oh. It's the pacifistes. Someone screamed just before he was crushed underfoot by one of the hulking behemoths. Another pirate hazarded a slash at the approaching titans, only to be caught up in an explosion as the giant opened its maw and spat a golden stream of light in his direction. Naruto watched the man die and blanched. So this, then, was a pacifista. He'd read about them, he'd heard the rumors, but still, to see one up close. They really did look just like Kuma. It was unnerving. Even Moreso, that they were wielding the powers of Kizaru's Pika Pika no Mi. What are the Marines' elite human weapons from the war doing in a place like this? Another pirate cried, weeping as he flopped into the dirt, utterly unable to take on such a terrible abomination such as these. Most of the pirates seemed to be suffering a similar fate, even as they realized that they'd been deceived. Naruto didn't so much as spare an errant thought for them and their fate. Fools would always die fools, so it seemed. Instead, he stood his ground, watching as the invincible human weapons of the world government came hurtling toward him. He spied Sentomaru within the chaos of Marine versus Pirate and smiled softly to himself, but made no move to confront him. So that was all they were going to send, then. A couple of antique pacifista and Sentomaru. In the time that it took for him to blink, fake Luffy had already been viciously clubbed across the head by the axe-wielding Marine, while the remaining imposters quite literally quit the field. Let them take their chances with the flames, he mused to himself. Their fate is none of my concern. His relief, however, turned out to be temporary. Pirates, Burning Will Uzumaki Naruto and Straw Hat Luffy identified. One of the pacifista announced, its calm, monotone a voice ringing out over the clearing. Seconds after the fact, Naruto realized that, during his musings, most of the pirates had been captured, and he was standing conspicuously out in the open. He was dimly aware of that he'd been detected, but somehow, he couldn't quite focus on the task at hand. Instead, the word Straw Hat Luffy rang through his head like a clarion call, filling him with an elation that he hadn't felt since 2 years ago. Take them out, PX5. Sentomaru ordered. You too, PX2. Unbidden, lightning raced down Naruto's spine. Luffy? He's here. Where? He half turned, hoping to find him over his shoulder. Instead, he became deathly aware of the resounding explosion that deafened him, throwing a hail of timber and soil at his back as the deck behind him detonated. He watched as an obscenely large pack filled to the brim with various foodstuffs, spun past, and landed not a yard away from him. Whoa. A terribly familiar voice shouted. Man, was that close. And what was that for? All my precious food is in this bag, you know. All of the pirates and Marines cried out as one, and pointing and shouting and screaming, gibbering like they were frightened schoolgirls. They couldn't believe their eyes. He wasn't dead. Monkey D. Luffy, the son of Dragon, was here, alive, in Sabaody. It's the face from the wanted postier. Naruto was stunned. Luffy? Save for the X-shaped scar on his chest and some new attire, he hadn't changed at all. He frowned indignantly at the pacifistas who had nearly incinerated him, but otherwise, he remained unharmed. It was impossible not to recognize him. The straw hat, the stitched scar beneath his eye, heck, even his voice was nearly the same. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Don't tell me you're gonna get in my way again. He called down to Sentomaru. I don't have the time to deal with you right now. Naruto watched the two of them bicker for a moment longer before he finally realized that this was not a dream and this was, in fact, the genuine article. The pirate he had searched high and low across the sea nearly for 2 years now. And so he laughed. Luffy? Naruto laughed aloud, unable to say anything else, such was his enthusiasm. It's you. it really is you. Nanda. Luffy blinked, suddenly very much aware of the blonde standing beside him. Who are you? He squinted at the blonde whose body roiled and broiled like so much flame, and he found his words taken away as he recognized the color of those flames. Because this was the very same power his brother had wielded prior to death. Wait a minute. It couldn't be. No way. Naruto grinned wickedly. After all these years, I've finally found you, Monkey D. Luffy. Now, let me join your crew. Luffy blinked, unsure of exactly who this man was, unsure of why he was on fire, and not screaming in pain, or burning, for that matter. Weird, but he looked strong. And if a strong guy wanted to join his crew, the crew of the future Pirate King. Sure. Luffy enthused. But why are you on fire? Naruto couldn't help himself. He started laughing again. Ha. Just like that, huh? You haven't changed a bit, Luffy. His laughter was cut short as a beam of light whisked itself past Luffy, who nonchalantly turned his head and let it slip aside. He even had the time to murmur something that Naruto didn't quite hear as the beam passed them by and tore through the mangroves. And suddenly, Luffy's arm was turning a strange rubberized pink and smoking. Naruto was about to remark on it when a shadow fell over him. He barely even registered the second pacifista until it was right on top of him. And by then, it was already too late. For the pacifista, that is. Scarce had it neared Uzumaki D. Naruto than a wall of blue and gold flames, entirely unlike the black flames of the Amaterasu, sprang up between them. The pacifista did not slow. Not until a giant flaming hand clamped around its midsection and wrapped around it, encircling the machine's hulking waist as though it were naught but a twig. You're interrupting our reunion. Naruto murmured darkly, eyes flashing, glimmering with red moistness. Out of my way, trash. It was an eerie appendage, this hand made of both bone and flame, and scion of azure saffron curling about the pacifista, holding it fast, hoisting it up, up, until its feet left the soil, until it was left scrabbling for purchase in the air. Finding none, it opened its mouth and flailed with both its hands, trying terribly to free itself from this vice, but to no avail, for the vice was inescapable. Then, before the eyes of Sentomaru, the unthinkable occurred. The bony thumb pressed down upon the top of its head, forcing its mouth closed before the pacifista could find a target, before it could fire. The result was catastrophic. Unable to fire the compressed beam of light, the suppressed energy had nowhere left to go but up. With a deafening whump it imploded, the energy frying its photoreceptors and scrambling its circuit so hopelessly beyond repair that it had no chance of survival. And then the mighty fingers of the flaming hand closed. They simply curled into a fist, and the pacifista was crushed between them, reduced to little more than a mangled heap of scrap that was promptly cast aside like a broken toy, left to die in the dirt and be forgotten. It did not rise again. And there was more than one pacifista carcass laying upon the ground as well. In the time that it had taken Naruto to dispense with one pacifista, Luffy had also taken down PX2 as well, the massive machine having knifed into the dirt, and it too lay deathly still. The pirates gawped. We couldn't even scratch one of those things, and they took out two like it was nothing. Luffy remained as he was, but it was Naruto's surroundings that had changed. Materializing outward from the ghoulish appendage that had crushed the pacifista, a grisly creature of shadow and flame and was born. Little more than a human skeleton, the creature loomed over its master, its ghastly appearance bellying the awesome power it wielded and that of its creator, who stood enshrouded within its ribsage. Gleaming with ill intent, the creature raised its right hand, and within its fingers appeared a blade of blazing luminescence. So, you've come here to join the Straw Hat crew, have you, Burning Will? Sentomaru accused, heedless of the smoldering sword that loomed over their heads. I'm going to arrest you either way, but I'd like to know. Something like that. Naruto replied as Luffy turned and waved to someone approaching. I don't suppose you let me pass now, will you? Sentomaru's brow furrowed, eyes flickering with exasperation and annoyance. He'd struck a nerve. Sentomaru still held a grudge against him for the way in which he'd beaten Kizaru within an inch of his life. In the time that it took for him to attack, it would all be over, and he knew this. Still, Naruto wasn't expecting his reply. Like hell I will. Sentomaru all but snarled. I'm going to bring you to justice, here and now, for what you've done. Didn't think so. Naruto muttered. Well, I don't have time to play with you or whatever Admiral headquarters has sent after me. Before Sentomaru could broach the subject further, the grim reaper of a creature brought its blade crashing down into the ranks of the marines, scattering them and kicking up copious amounts of dust. When it cleared, a number of marines were either dead or wounded, and Naruto was nowhere to be seen. He did, however, have a clear view of the last remaining pacifista going down in a heap of smoldering circuits, as none other than Zolo and Sanji ran it through. Apparent, Luffy had been waving to them while he was distracted. Now as he watched it fall, watched his men gawp, watched them declare that the real Straw Hat crew was indeed alive, and well, his fury knew no bounds. Wait. Come back here. Oddly enough, Luffy paused. Hey, what's wrong? Sanji demanded. What are you stopping for? Rayleigh. Luffy was staring at a nearby tree, a tree in which a very familiar old man was currently sitting. Standing beside him was none other than Burning Will himself, though how he had crossed the distance between them in such short fashion remained to be seen. It did not, however, keep the future king of the pirates from calling out to him, no sir, it did not in the least. The Dark King. The captured pirate squealed in fear. He's here too. You've done well. Rayleigh shouted to Luffy. It seems like you've honed your skills even further. Aha. Luffy nodded enthusiastically. I also thought I'd come to see you off. Rayleigh said to Naruto, giving the boy an encouraging nudge. But it doesn't look like my grandson needs my help, after all. For the longest time, there was silence. Utter silence, as Silver's Rayleigh willingly exposed the one secret that he had kept hidden for most of his life, to the world. Naruto burned with the shame of it all. He wouldn't have the nerve to do such a thing, not if it were his grandson. He flushed. Shut up, old man. He's the grandson of the Dark King Silver's Rayleigh. Marines and pirates alike gawped at the revelation. The grandson of Rayleigh and the son of Dragon working together surely meant the end of them all. Even Zolo and Sanji were slightly nonplussed to hear this. So this was him, Burning Will then. Well, he was certainly every bit as imposing as the papers had made him out to be. Rayleigh. Luffy shouted once more. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna become the Pirate King. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the unshed tear in his grandfather's eye. Then he slapped Luffy on the back. Not hard enough to harm him, mind you, the boy was a rubber man after all, just enough to urge him forward and away from the remaining marines that dared to harry their footsteps. Head straight for the top. Rayleigh shouted at their backs. Both of you. Sure thing, Gramps. He kept running. Even as his grandfather turned to face the marines. Even as his sword cleared his scabbard. Even when the sound of their pursuers grew distant, even when it vanished altogether, he kept running, careful to keep his pace, careful to keep pace with Luffy. He wasn't going to lose sight of him now, not after all the trouble he'd gone through to find him in the first place. Rayleigh watched him go and smiled softly. My apprentice and grandson are setting sail. He began slowly, turning to face the many marines who stood on the opposite end of the line he'd just drawn in the dirt. By all means, do as you please, but I would suggest. His glasses gleamed ever so slightly. That you do not cross this line. Crap, they're one step ahead of us. Zolo hissed as they rounded a bend, only to find even more marines barring their path. Rather, they were, until dozens upon dozens of ghosts swept down upon the soldiers and phased right through each and every one of them. As one, they dropped to their hands and knees, moaning and depressed and all too full of demotivation. Naruto nearly froze on the spot at the sight of it. Gee ghosts. I just knew this mayhem had something to do with you people. Hovering only a few feet from the now utterly useless marines was a woman with incredibly bright and curly pink hair. Not to mention a positively ghoulish outfit that would put any goth to utter shame. Are you still hanging around here? She asked. Apparently, she was the one who controlled the spirits, and as such Naruto stopped well short of her position, leaving Zolo to nearly run face-first into the strange goth Lolita. That Sanji was fawning over her was even more disturbing. Well, what are you still hanging around here? He demanded of the strange girl. It's not like I asked you to stick around. Is that any way to talk back to the person who brought you all the way here? She snapped right back, why, if it weren't for me you'd be. Then she noticed Naruto. Oh, and who is this? She asked, drifting closer to Naruto. You look familiar. Kind of cute, even. Have I seen you somewhere before? Naruto wasn't listening to any of it. All he saw was the strange spirits listing about at her side, drawing ever nearer to him. Ghosts. Why, oh why, did it have to be ghosts? Their sickly sweet smiling and giggling did precious little to assuage his intense superstitions, and they were just so creepy. And not, really. He averted his gaze as she approached. I don't think we've ever met. No, she insisted, I've definitely seen your face before. Ja. Naruto made a squelching sound as she drifted even closer to him, floating impossibly just above the ground, as if she weighed little or next to nothing. His usual self-confidence abandoned him in the wake of what he'd seen and in the presence of this foul ghost-wielding woman. Well, he told himself, at least she was cute. Wait, what if she was a cute ghost? Gah. He couldn't stand it. Ah. Naruto nearly jumped out of his skin, so close was she when next she spoke. I thought I recognized you. You're Burning Will, aren't you? Why yes. He refused to look in her eye. Gods, why couldn't this ghostly woman just leave him be? And I'm afraid I have somewhere to be. Too bad. She sighed, her lips dangerously close. My name's Perona, by the way, cutie. Something deathly cold pressed against his cheek, then passed right through it. To his disbelief and dismay, so did she. There was no substance, no solidarity, nothing at all. She simply phased through him and emerged behind him. Naruto turned white as a sheet and shuddered all over, lurching back and forth on his heels. He'd just been kissed by a ghost. Ugh, I think I'm going to be sick. Sanji was gawping at him, eyes full of flame. Luffy looked completely unperturbed. Zolo was blushing. Worst of all, Perona was smiling. Nothing, however, could have prepared Naruto for what happened next. He felt a faint surge of killer intent, then the hairs on the back of his neck prickled in warning. Unfortunately, Naruto was still in the process of trying to turn when he saw a face he hadn't seen in a very, very long time. "You dirty rotten scoundrel." Something very hard and very, very solid cracked across his face and sent him sprawling. He recognized the voice, somehow, despite the black spot speckling across his eyes and blurring his vision. Odd. He couldn't remember the last time someone had struck him. Certainly not since he'd eaten the Maramara no Mi. He tasted blood in his mouth as he rolled over and onto his back, the world still swimming in and out of focus. Wah. You fucking bastard. Bright pink hair flashed before his vision, then strong hands seized the lapels of his jacket and practically dragged him to his feet. She slapped him. Not gently. Stars, no, whole planets exploded before his vision, before he realized that both blows had been enfaced with hockey. Both blows were solid, too. Painfully so. Not Perona then, certainly not. She'd have just phased right through him, and she'd no reason to strike him, for that matter. You no good fucking bastard. That shook him right out of his daze. It took some time, but eventually, the word swam into focus for him. Immediately, he wished it hadn't. He recognized her. How could he not? Hers was a face that he could have forgotten if he had the heart to forget. He did not. Nor did he have the strength to avert his gaze once focused. Because now he could see. Belatedly, he realized that she was crying as she struck him, each blow growing weaker and lacking of focus until they passed through him altogether. Ah, Bonnie. He half laughed, half groaned, around a mouthful of bloody lips. Long time no see. You won't be able to see it all when I'm through with you. She snarled at him, but her words lacked their usual venom. At length, she released him. Naruto wobbled for a moment, then regained his balance, his features already resetting into their usual shape as the flames boiled away what damage had been done to them. He stood woodenly, not taking enough care as he did so. So how did you find me, Bonnie? He asked at last, brushing himself off. I didn't expect to see you here. You gave me your Viver card, Dumbus. Oh yeah. Naruto scratched the back of his head in contrition. Forgot about that. Did you forget about your promise, too? She accused, sparks snarling through her eyes as she stepped closer. Then, more softly. Did you forget about me? Abruptly anger died. Replaced by something akin to hope, albeit a forlorn one. Ouch. Shock lanced through Naruto. He hadn't forgotten about their promise, thought she might have expected him to, after he'd fled. I haven't forgotten. He argued weakly. It's just that I made him a promise, too. With that, Naruto started to silently move away. She quickly turned and reached out with her hand, grabbing his forearm. He froze. Taking his hand, she brought to her face, cradling her cheek. All at once he surged forward, seizing Bonnie in his arms and kissing her with a ferocity that nearly overwhelmed her. I've been a fool. She shouldn't feel this way. Jewelry. Bonnie had never cared for such trivialities, and she cursed herself for them now. Love was a weakness. Love was an anchor. A chain. It held you down and tied you a noose around your neck, one that slowly constricted over time. Love was a weakness. Love was a cancer that grew inside and made one do foolish things. Love is death. The love most dreamed of was something that would be more important to one than anything, even life. It would kill her to love him. Perhaps not now, but eventually. Bonnie knew this, and yet, she pressed her lips against his for a second time, throwing her arms round his neck and securing herself fast against him. She felt him stiffen at this uncharacteristic display of inhuman weakness, then she felt him relax, both into her lips and into her, as he swept his arms around her, leaned into her lips, and drew her closer into a strange foe of an embrace. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. It was terrifying. And it wasn't enough. It took everything in her not to bolt, and ultimately, it still wasn't enough. In the end, the sound of cannon fire jolted them from one another. At any rate, you need to set sail as soon as possible. Perona insisted. There are battleships appearing just offshore. Shock rippled across the five of them and between the two of them, especially Naruto. He'd been so caught up in her that he'd nearly forgotten everything else. Just like last time. He shuddered, nodded, and forced his fingers from her hair, her face, and finally, himself from her. She shook her head mutely, knowingly, and Naruto felt his heart break 1,000 times over as he watched the despair well up in her eyes anew. Blast. He thought himself prepared for this. He'd been wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. Naruto turned to face Jewelry Bonnie. I have to go. Idiot. She mumbled, refusing to look him in the eye. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving that time? Naruto shrugged, lamely. I suck at goodbyes, Bonnie. Then don't say it this time. She whispered softly. Eh? I said don't say goodbye this time. Naruto grunted as she stomped on his foot and ground her heel in. Yep, same old Bonnie. Tsundere or not, she still knew how to kick his ass when he got out of line. Still, he winced as she withdrew, the action striking painfully at the core of his soul. Her lips touched his for a final time, touching, lingering, then falling away, with the rest of her. She took 2 steps away from him. And he saw how much effort that took from her. I'll see you in the new world. He promised, hoping he sounded more convicted than he felt. Because suddenly, he wasn't feeling all that convicted at all at the moment. With the former love of his life, things had always been complicated. It had always been that way. You bet your ass you will. Bonnie's reply was softer than he'd expected, not quite sad, nor could it be Khaled happy. He couldn't be sure of what to make of it. And before he had the chance to dissect it further, she spun about on one heel and walked away. Watching her walk away, watching a woman he'd loved walk out of his life, it took every fiber of his being to stand fast, to stand still and not break in two. Suddenly, it occurred to Naruto that he might not see her again. And so, he watched. He watched her go, watched the swaying of her hips, watched everything and anything about her. He stayed that way, just watching, waiting and watching until she'd rounded a corner and paused. She turned, her gaze locking with his, even across the distance that separated him. She touched a hand to her necklace, raising it as far as that chain would allow, and then she let it drop to her chest, instead of breaking it, as he'd feared she would. It was a gesture of acceptance, of forgiveness, and of relinquishment. Take care of yourself. She called from across the corner, then she rounded it and was taken from his sight. Naruto found himself staring, although she was gone. Even then, it took a harsh word from Sanji to draw him from his reverie. He blinked and found that his eyes were suddenly moist. Why was that? Did he truly miss her already? It wasn't too late. If he wanted, he could chase after her, maybe even catch up. So why wasn't he moving? Because he was needed elsewhere. He'd made a promise to Ace, and, though it pained him to do so, he just couldn't bring himself to break it. That promise had been the very definition of who he was for the last 2 years. He had molded his very life around it, conformed to it, made sacrifices for it, and, given the chance, he would likely make many, many more in the future. "Oi, you alright?" Zolo asked, his voice tinged with concern. Naruto didn't know the swordsman all that well, but he felt that the man's intent was genuine. With that knowledge, the apoplectic rage brewing behind his eyes dimmed, leaving him only with a dull ache just above his chest. For a moment, it looked as though he might rebel. His lips pursed into a thin line however, and even Luffy could have seen that it was only with great reluctance that burning will discarded his thoughts of desertion. At length, he exhaled, heavily. "I will be." Naruto sighed and scrubbed at his eyes with the back of his hand, his expression still somewhat on the dour side. Eventually. "Can we get going now? I find myself with a sudden desire to be far, far away from this place." Zolo inclined his head a fraction of an inch. "I think we can manage that." Verona bid them farewell shortly thereafter. Thankfully, she didn't try to kiss him again. Naruto didn't know if he could handle it, teasing or not. A small part of him yearned for comfort and solace. He was torn. He would likely remain that way for quite some time. As they hurried through the streets, however, it was ultimately Sanji who'd taken it upon himself to harass his fellow blonde. Naruto had been expecting this. In fact, he welcomed it. Anything to turn his mind from her, from the life he'd just left behind, a life of contention and peace. Best not to think of it, he mused. Better to distract himself. "Just who the hell do you think you are, huh?" Sanji was asking, when, abruptly, Naruto rounded on him. Naruto rounded on him, moving with a speed that Sanji had not thought possible. One moment he'd been yards away, watching his former lover walk out of his life. The next, smoldering swirls of sapphire and scarlet swelled before his vision, blotting out all else. Belatedly, Sanji realized that Naruto wasn't angry. He was furious. Furious was risking the term actually. Perhaps enraged fit the bill. Perhaps it did, as Sanji began to realize that he'd broached the one subject that could easily draw the ire of burning will. And in his foolishness, Sanji had drawn ire in spades. "Are we talking about my love life or yours?" Naruto countered, his tone curt, his expression pitch black. "Because, if I were you, I'd hold my tongue. That is, unless you'd like to loose it, friend." He practically spat the word, a wisp of ash leaking through his lips as he spoke. Zolo and Luffy had both slowed, peering back towards the unfolding scene, wondering what had caused the sudden delay. Naruto paid them no heed. Instead, he was suddenly consumed by the desire to cook the cook, as it were. You've got some nerve, breaking her heart like that. Sanji snapped back, bending his leg at the knee, lifting it in threat of retaliation. I would never. Oh, shove it. Naruto shoved past him, nearly knocking his fellow blonde off balance as he pressed onward. At that very moment, something miraculous occurred. Zoro had an epiphany. Why was Burning Will traveling with them in the first place, he wondered. Why did he seem to be on such good terms with Luffy, he wondered. Why hadn't he thought of this just now? Boy, he began slowly as Naruto caught up to them. Why are you following us, anyway? Why, I'm part of the crew, of course. Naruto replied, matter-of-factly. Why else would I still be here? What? Sanji shouted. And who decided this, huh? It's fine by me. Luffy laughed. Zolo sighed. Not again. Looks like we'll have to save the introductions for later. Naruto remarked as the sound of cannon fire reached their ears. For now, I'd think we'd better get back to the ship, wouldn't you agree? It was then that the massive shadow of a gigantic flying bird fell across them. From there, the rest was little more than a gigantic smear on burning memory. Currently. Akram. The sound of cannon fire could be heard all around. It brought Naruto back from his memories, gently but insistently tugging him back to the present, to the here and now. He blinked, clearing the soot and smoke from his eyes, just in time to avoid being doused by another spray of seawater. Blasted Marines. They were still harassing them even as they tried to make their escape from the grove. Should we fire back? Usopp was asking Brook. Maybe we should try to outmaneuver them. Oh, but that turret. No, Naruto stated. He climbed down the rigging toward them, clutching his staff in his hand firmly. He had a dangerous look that made Nami nervous. We are getting out of here. Now. He was all but seeing red. The tension had built and built and built within him, and now it demanded release. And a release was just what he planned to give the Marines. Oh, a release indeed. Nami stared at him, mouth agape. You don't mean? Naruto stopped in front of everyone, frowning severely. Stand back. Well back. They did as they were told. Even as Robin ushered everyone back a ways across the galley, Naruto was already concentrating. Swirls of fire were gathering around his hands and working their way up his arms, the flames suddenly growing hotter and more pronounced. He didn't unleash the energy, however. He held his hands above his head and closed his eyes, his mouth moving in a silent chant. The fire grew. White energy began to course around his body, lighting up the sky like it was daylight. He beckoned, his fingers crooking upward as they formed a claw. His hands shook, and it became obvious that the technique was difficult for Naruto to control. He gritted his teeth and clutched the sword tightly, and a halo of flames slowly surrounded him. Move. Nami didn't bother to ask why. Because she'd already thrown herself to the deck. An instant later, a blaze of orange discharge swelled overhead and consumed her existence within a firestorm of travesty. The fireball, when it was unleashed, shook the entire ship. There was a massive flash of light and a roar of sound that deafened everyone, then the backlash of force from the blast, all but throwing them back several feet. The clouds burst before him, boiling away as his lips parted for a single, solitary command. I can. Naruto roared, his knuckles bursting before the command. Summoning a spiraling pillar of flame, subsequently engulfing everything within a 3-mile radius. The fleet never stood a chance. A massive fist of heat and fire barreled forward, its jaws wide and gaping as it lurched toward its prey. Within 2 beats, the entire Navy fleet was all but decimated. Some were already sunk, others were still in the process capsizing, leaving sailors to flounder helplessly in the waters of the archipelago, and everyone else to wonder at the grisly aftermath of the attack. Sanji tried to take a smoke, only to realize his cigarette too hadn't escaped the blaze unharmed. He could only swear in disbelief as the cigar crumbled into nothingness as it turned to ash in his mouth, leaving little more than a blackened stub between his teeth. When he went to reach for another one, he was dismayed to find that they too had been obliterated by the blast. That's a Nova gun. I've changed my mind. Usopp stammered aloud, performing a sudden and about face on his refusal to let Naruto join the crew. He can stay. That was super. Frankie laughed boisterously. I like this guy. He's a damned monster, just like those 3, Nami sobbed tearfully. It'll take a monster to kill someone like him. Monsters? Zolo asked blandly, utterly unfazed by the chaos. You mean us? Yes, I mean you. Sugoi. Chopper squeaked. He's just like Ace. Ace. Naruto half-turned, a single ruby red iris reappearing over his right shoulder as he regarded he who had spoken. He completed the revolution, jaw slackened, eyes widened. In the split second that it took him to turn around, he found himself face to face with his target. He couldn't believe his eyes. Luffy gawped. That was Ace's attack just now. Boy. Naruto barked. Bakayaru. Do I look like Portuguese de Ace to you? Eh? Nanda? Luffy blinked, suddenly very much aware of the blonde standing at the helm of his ship. What was that? He squinted at the blonde whose body roiled and broiled like so much flame, and he found his words taken away as he recognized the color of those flames. Because this was the very same power his brother had wielded, only this time on no circumstance could he be mistaken. Wait a minute. It couldn't be. No way. I've decided. Luffy announced. You'll be our fireman. Naruto's sweat dropped. Does a ship even need one of those? On my ship we do. Luffy reaffirmed enthusiastically. So it's official. I'm part of the crew? Naruto asked. Luffy grinned. Sure. Everyone excluding Robin faulted. Damn it, Luffy. Miles away, Bo Hancock finally dared to draw breath. So that is Burning Will. Miles away, Hancock, who had been about to intervene on Luffy's behalf, gawped at the ruination that surrounded them. Within seconds, the entire marine fleet had been reduced to little more than smoldering ashes. They'd been utterly decimated. All save for one. Peering through the spyglass, she abruptly realized that this particular ship was a great deal larger than that of its fellows. Also, someone was standing at the prow of that great and mighty battleship. Rather, two someones, both of whom bore the white coat of a Navy Admiral. Their distinct yellow and red colorations could be seen, even from this distance. They were unmistakable. Undeniable. At long last, the Navy had responded to the threat that Burning Will carried, though not as great a threat to Luffy as she feared, it was a different threat to which she desperately moved to intercept. Oh dear. Standing upon the prow of the mighty battlecruiser, Akainu sneered, confident of his triumph. This time, you won't escape me, Burning Will. What if Naruto is neglected by the family devil fruit harem? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.